And we're live. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Friday 3D Printing Community Hangout. Tonight's topic is going to be what inspires you. Now, by that, the intended meaning is what inspires you to print the models you print, to model the models that you make. Inspires you. Now, by that, hang on. The intended meaning is what inspires you to... Amateur.
Not me this time.
Yeah. What inspires you to print the models that you print? What inspires you to how you model or what you model? What inspires you when you have multiple choices on a certain model or type of model? What inspires you? What makes you choose one over the other? And the other thought that I had in mind was, what inspiration do you use when you're finishing or post-processing a 3D print after it comes off the printer? So the other thing that we have going on tonight is the voting for the Friday 3D Printing Community Hangout logo. We had 4 submissions over the last month, and those submissions for the last almost 24 hours have been posted on a survey. I will, and so will the other co-hosts, will be posting it in the chat throughout the night. Or if you want, you can visit the description and click on the link there. It's at the very top. That is open until 11:30 p.m. So you have about an hour and 26 minutes yet to go and vote if you haven't already. All the submissions were from community members, and whichever one wins out tonight is going to be the one that we use for social media, down in the bottom corners of the streams, all that kind of stuff. So in the chat now, I see Martin posted it there, 3DP Iceland. He's got the link posted already. So make sure you guys get a chance to go visit that and make your vote count. So let's start with our usual beginning order. We'll do some introductions from the current co-hosts that we have. Martin, go ahead. We'll start with you.
Yeah, my name is Marteinn, and I have a channel called 3DP Iceland, or 3D Printing Iceland. I started 3D printing this year in July and decided to do a YouTube channel along with my learning process of using a 3D printer. So I've been enjoying that journey. I've also been doing a lot of 3D printed landscapes that I print out and paint. Here's one of the examples that I have. I've been printing those out and painting and sending out to various YouTubers just to get contacts and exchanging stickers, also sending out my channel stickers. So that's me for now, at least.
All right, we'll go to the next one in my row down here at the bottom. Richard.
Okay, all right, I'm Richard Murray. My channel is the Zidim channel, Z-I-D-I-M, and my focus is on 3D printing for model trains. And I do things for the last 6 months, I've been focused on horses. So I'm very happy with where I've gotten to so far with the horses. And what else? I'm on Twitter at Zidim17, Facebook. Actually, Facebook, it's mostly 3D printing for model trains that we looked at doing things. And I'm live every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time.
All right, John.
Hi, everyone. This is John. Would you do it? I run a DIY channel, but I'm involved in everything. I do 3D printing. I started doing modeling in Fusion 360 really to support the 3D printing. If you want to catch me, you can certainly comment on one of my videos, but Twitter is where I'm most active. And I don't know, I think there was like 150 tweets that went out today. So if that gives you any indication of my activity on Twitter. I'm on Instagram also. All my links are available, like u_do_it. For Twitter, u.do.it. for Instagram. And on YouTube, you can see my name there in live chat, but it's UDOIT, the number 2. And I was on VidMe, but that's another story. All right, thanks.
All right. So tonight, before we get really started, I guess I'll do my intro, even though you guys are on my channel. I'm Matt from the How I Do It channel. On Twitter, I'm @CountryCowboy. Instagram, I'm Matthew Flinchball. Facebook, same thing. Pretty much everywhere but Twitter, it's just Matthew Flinchball or Matthew_Flinchball. I organize and make sure that every other Friday we have a stream set up and somebody to host it, and manage the Facebook F3D PCH streamers group, which is where all of us who you see on the streams each week, we're all members of that group. And that's where we share the information. We kind of do a little bit of prior discussion and a roll call on who we can expect to see in the stream that night. Sorry. Tonight, I do want to do something a little bit different that we haven't done in the past. For those of you who haven't seen it yet or haven't heard of him, Jeffrey Wright from the Print 3D channel is coming up on the close of his 3DP 365 project, where he, for the last almost year, has printed one item per day and posted a video to YouTube of that print, discussing the material that he used, the model that he printed, any issues that he had while he was printing it, things he's learned along the way. There was just an article the other day on one of the 3D printing websites spotlighting him and his 3DP 365 project. And it was an interesting read to see what Jeffrey had to say about the project and things that he's learned along the way. And I believe it was 2 years ago, maybe slightly more or less than that, that he had gotten his first 3D printer. And when he got it, he got it because his brother had passed away, and he really knew nothing, had no interest in 3D printing, but he got his G-Max printer from his brother, and he's learned a lot since then. He's become one of the role models, you could call it, on YouTube and on Twitter. So we wanted to give him a shout out from the F3D PCH community and say congratulations on, might as well say at this point, he's going to make it a full 365 days on his project. And I personally want to say congratulations, and on behalf of everybody who co-hosts the stream and joins in on the chat, we all want to send a thank you and a congratulations out to him. You see the chat going nuts about it. So this week we're talking about inspirations. What inspires you in any way with 3D printing, whether it's the models you print, the way you model something, or what you model, what you choose to model, or the way that you finish a model. So let's start off. I guess let's go down the line and just kind of see what everybody on the panel has to say as far as where they pull inspiration from, or what makes up your mind. Let's go back to the beginning here and start with Martin.
Yeah, for me, it's mostly what I got interesting in when I was thinking about what I'm going to print, besides everyday objects around the house, is those 3D printed landscape models I do. So I love to go travel around Iceland and go either by car or hiking. I did much more of hiking back in the day, but now I usually travel by car, and I really enjoy the Icelandic highlands and the landscape. And I'm also taking photographs when I'm traveling, and when I got the printer, I saw that I could use my 3D models that I use for my map making to print them out, and that has been a good source of enjoyment for me to print out and paint and create YouTube videos of that process. So that is has been keeping me busy. But then I do a lot of testing. I got the MakerBox subscription, and I like to test out filaments and try out different kinds of filaments and creating YouTube content with those. So I really enjoy that also. But I think landscapes and nature is the main inspiration that goes in my head when I think about this.
I think we've talked about this before, Martin. What causes you to choose the areas that you do the landscape models of?
Yeah, it's either areas that are special to me in some way. I've traveled almost everywhere in Iceland, but some places are that I'm more fond of. But sometimes I think of because I take the models, print them out and paint, and send out to other YouTubers, and sometimes try to relate to that YouTuber some area that I am thinking of. So I try to find an area that I can talk about in my YouTube video and in the letter I sent when I sent out the landscape print, and hoping that people will relate a little bit about that area I sent them. So that's one of the things.
And I can say personally, I know you actually were the inspiration for doing this one. This is an area that I grew up camping in, the mountain area that I camp in, and we still, even now being married, now my mother-in-law and my wife and I and my kids all go up to this area as well where my parents are. And I got this idea from you, actually, from these streams and watching your videos and stuff. I still have yet to paint it. I've had this printed out now for probably 3 or 4 months, but I haven't painted the maps yet.
Yeah, I use just normal acrylic paints to paint them, and it's rather easy to paint. So I have no painting or artistic background, but I enjoy mixing the colors and spreading them out like I think the landscape should look like, and always take some. I usually look at a aerial photo of the area to get a general idea of where is vegetation and where is just rocks and such. And especially I try to find the parameters of if there are lakes or glaciers in the area, so I try to get those correct in the map. But often the 3D model will show if there's a lake in the map. It's a flat area surrounded by some mountains.
That's got to take one of the reasons I haven't painted mine yet is that's got to take a steady hand for doing some of the finer details, like when you have little creeks and stuff like that run through the valleys or run down the mountains and stuff. I'm not sure if I've got the steady hand yet to do all that.
Yeah, that's one a difficult one. The scale of the maps I'm doing, like a small river in the map is so tiny, it might be less than 1 millimeter in width. So I don't even try to paint those. I just paint if it's a major river. So okay. It's difficult to trace out all the fine details.
Yeah, one of the things I'd like to do with that mountain range area is all the trails that I've hiked and have GPS locations of, or trails of them. I'd like to paint all those onto it and everything. Someday I'll sit down and actually do that.
Yeah, one of the things I did to create smaller detail, I got those pens. It's a Posca pen. It's like a acrylic paint inside,
Okay.
and then I can buy them with different types of tips, so I can make wider rivers or very small detail with those. It's more easy than using a paintbrush if I'm gonna do fine detail.
I'll have to keep that in mind. I have heard of those and I've seen them, but I actually didn't think of them until you just showed it.
Yeah, they work quite well on the PLA.
Cool. All right, Richard, what sources do you use for your inspiration?
Well, you can see on the screen here, this is from a Facebook group pre-1985 railroads and that. And I've been a fan of history since I was a kid. My first work, actually, my first paying job was as a field archaeologist. But when I come through and you find details like this, for old trains, you just can't get these things in the store. You're going to be making them yourself. And the craftsmanship that went into, it's not just steam trains, the technology pre-1900 is just amazing how they treated it, and they treated it as a work of art. You look at the steam engines in England, some pump engines in London used for pumping sewage were named after royalty, and they were fully set up, and there's my dog joining in, fully set up as a tourist site. And so, and to see them these days, yeah, you would want to go see these. It's pumping sewage, but it's beautiful. All the wrought iron work and that. So that's the sort of thing I look at for getting into the modeling. But lately, there's another one I've gotten into, and that this is the Smithsonian 3D area. And they've taken items of their collection. They only have 64 items here, but one of these is, this is the Philadelphia gunboat, and I printed it off, and you know, it was sunk in War of 1812, I believe. I could be wrong on that, but so the boards are separated, but you get some incredible detail on here. Just waiting for the connection to catch up, but first of all, you can go and explore these things, but you can download the files. And when you download the files, you're actually printing bits of history. One of the things they have is actually a command module for Apollo 11. I go, this is a way to get into history, and I'm waving my hands around again, but a way to get into the history of things and actually feel it, touch it, show it off to people. There we go, we're off. Show it off to people, and it just brings it home. There's another site. Where did I put that? Here's the boat, by the way. Here's the printout from the boat. And as you can see, yeah, the planks are individual planks. Just to learn more about that boat, there's one on anthropology, and you can go print out the various hominids that are out there and actually, once again, feel, touch, look at them. And I just think that's just so exciting to be able to do that. And the other side, and it ties into the stream, teaching people about 3D printing and bringing it home, what can be done. I spent a few hours at a store today because we got in conversation of 3D printing. I started emptying my pockets, and we had all the store staff there and people walking by, and we talked about what you could do. And it's amazing when people, I can make that myself, and that's the big thing. It's not the, I'm going to go out to a store and buy something. It's, I can design something and make it my way.
Cool. When you're doing your, like, the train prints and stuff, where do you get your reference images and stuff from? Do you just use like Google image search to find most of that stuff? Or is there, I know like the train modeling community, I know is a huge community far beyond 3D printing. What do you guys use for your references?
It sort of branches off to a field called industrial archaeology. And I had a very large collection on books and that, collecting images off the internet. Unfortunately, our house was flooded out in 2013. I lost 57 feet of magazines. And that was just my magazine collection, not to mention a couple of thousand books. And, you know, a few hundred books on trains and industrial archaeology for the machines. But the horses, actually my big inspiration for the horses right now, because, you know, I've been printing these folks out there. I'm now happy with the process. I volunteered with the program just a couple of blocks from here, therapeutic riding. And it's for people who have medical issues, some of it's balance, some of it's social, muscular, what have you. They go and it's a 30-minute ride with a horse. Some people need sidewalkers and horse handlers, what have you. I've been both a volunteer doing that and a rider doing that. And they have 8 horses there right now. And my goal is over the next month, I'm going to model each of those horses and print it out and donate them to the group. So I just love being part of the program. I'm not on it right now because I got a rather large waist and I went over their weight limit. So the horses can't hold me up. These are working horses. They have riders on them, you know, 5 hours a day, 5 days a week. They do get the winter off, but so that you have to look after the horses quite a bit. And unfortunately, I'm not up to leading a horse around right now, but I'm going to take up modeling the horses for them. So yeah, there's inspiration all over. Landscape right now, I live in the middle of the mountains. I love it here. And folks at the museum said, have you seen that cliff over there? I bet that would make a good model. So I'm getting into doing things like that as well.
Cool. John, where do you get your inspiration for what you print, what you model? I know you're an app designer too, so I mean, even if you want to throw that in here too, where do you get your inspirations from?
So can you hear me? Am I cutting out or is there any lag?
You sound good so far.
Okay. Being an engineer, but I'm also an artist, I'm kind of conflicted. I got to say that I'm like probably 90% on the engineering side. You know, my brain, the way I work. So I see something like Chris's practical printing approach to solve a problem. And for me, it was like a tie rack, right? I'm wearing a tie tonight. I wear ties almost everywhere. So I would just design a tie rack, and that was one of my videos. This is the tie rack. And, you know, it's just, you can see the slats there, maybe, if it comes up. Just to do something practical. And that helped me learn a lot about the modeling program. And Bob Young, Happy Extruder, they both were in there during my streams and helping coach me different ways to model in Fusion 360. And then I have this is another practical approach, which was, I mentioned this before, the battery cover. And the reason why I wanted to approach this was because I have my batteries that are lithium ion. They can cause a fire. They can explode. And I realized this after seeing some news report and somebody had a fire. So I noticed my battery was in my drill bag, my drill bits, and there were screws all over. And it's just, you know, the perfect opportunity to have like 3 screws go in here and cause a short and start a fire. So I started modeling this thing, and it was kind of a pain in the neck, but I started out by scanning this. I legit put this on the scanner, my HP scanner, scanned it in, got the profile into Adobe Illustrator. Later, I learned from Bob that I could have brought that directly into Fusion 360. And I started from there, but I started with this piece. This was my first print, and I think I'm on revision 11. And this was just the profile. So it's practical things like that. And see, and I'm like, oh crap, that was my first live stream about this build. I'm like, I'm ending the live stream on a happy note. So I legit just stopped the stream. I'm like, I got success. And then I just started building from there. And I learned a lot about that in Fusion 360. Things that I want to print are of the practical nature, but I do want to print some showy stuff. And I printed a honeycomb vase using Repcord's purple haze filament. And I got a great picture using this 49-inch TV, all white. I just took the photo with my cell phone as that as the background, and man, it came out great. So it's kind of things like that too that I want to do, just because it's like an ooh and ah factor, and it's a conversation starter, right? I want to help other people understand 3D printing, and the community here is great because they help provide all these resources. But if you look back to my early comments when I knew what a 3D printer was. I built my own CNC machine, but I didn't know how to 3D print. I didn't know what a slicer was. So I just searched 3D printing. Well, what's the first thing that came up? Uncle Jesse's video. He was doing like, I might have been the Deadpool mask or something. And I just put a comment on there. I'm like, man, I want that printer, but I think I'm going to get the Prusa. And then like a month later, I'm like, hey, Prusa's on its way. And then we started talking about that. So that's where I get my inspiration from, the community, but my analytical, semi-artistic mind draws me into practical prints. That's all.
I almost would agree and say the exact same thing you just said, John. When I first got my Delta that I put together, I said, I looked at Thingiverse and I was watching YouTube, and I'm like, I'm never going to print that stuff. And then I end up 2 years later with, stuff like this. Totally. Well, I shouldn't call that impractical, because even that, it's a scan using the Xbox Connect of my head. And even though it's not necessarily practical in a sense, I do plan on using that to do stuff like prop making, making foam helmets and things like that. I can use that as a model of my head because it's full scale. It's actually a little bit bigger than my head, which is fine for that kind of stuff. But when I first got a printer, I told my wife, I said, I'm not going to print the trinkets and stuff like that. I'm going to print all practical things. And I did for the longest time after I got my printer. Probably, well, when I say longest time, probably the first like 6 months or so that I had my printer, I really didn't print anything that wasn't practical. I was ideas in my head for things around the house, ways to improve stuff. I was doing all that kind of stuff. And people would ask me, what do you do with your 3D printer? Or what can you do with your 3D printer? And like you said, the trinkets, they're conversation starters. The practical stuff is kind of boring when you think about it. And when you try to like tell somebody, oh, I bought a wood lathe for $15 at an auction that didn't work, and I used my 3D printer to replace all the knobs and the controls that I needed on it in order to make it a fully functional lathe again, everybody just kind of gives you a blank stare because they can't relate to it. They didn't buy a lathe for $15 that didn't work. They actually kind of look at me and go, well, why would you have bought that lathe? I bought it knowing what I was capable of doing. But yeah, the inspiration to start printing the, so to speak, impractical things, a lot of the impractical things really are practical, because when somebody goes, hey, what do you use your 3D printer for? I can show them, you know, there's a full-size print of my head. Well, again, that's not, they'd look at that and go, well, what do you want that for? Or do things like Christmas ornaments, stuff like that, showing off impractical things and the capabilities of the printer. That's where I led down the path of printing a shore trooper helmet, the first prop that I ever printed, and I really had no interest in props before that. Now I've got a CR10 back there behind me so that I can print helmets faster. Not so much faster, but in one piece. So the inspiration for that kind of, I blame the community for that, because had it not been for our maker community and the 3D printing community, people like Uncle Jesse, Bill Duran, even Joel's been doing movie props and stuff here and there. Had it not been for them, I may still be at one printer and only printing mostly practical things. But seeing what they were doing and going, I could do that. Or, you know what? I really like Star Wars. I'd like a shore trooper helmet. And now I've got pieces of helmets sitting here from other printers that I've printed off on. And I've got a K2SO head that moves on its own and has electronics in for the eyes. Like, just totally impractical things. But when I show people that, when my wife and I set up for a vendor show or a craft show, that's the stuff that draws people in. The printers sitting there are one thing that usually grabs the attention of the kids, but it gets a goofy look from all the, I'd say 80 plus community. They come by and they're like, well, what's that thing? And they kind of want to walk on by until they start seeing the other stuff sitting on the table that we've printed with the printer. So yeah, I agree with you, John. I get my inspiration comes from a lot of practical uses, but the community, watching Twitter, watching Facebook, 90% of the reason that I'm on the Facebook group, the 3D printing Facebook group still, is because, you know, usually about once a week, at least once a week, somebody posts something that I go, man, I need to print that, or that's going on my list of things to print at some point. So the community, I blame the community for my 3D printing addiction.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'm sorry, good.
No, go ahead, John.
I just posted a link in the chat. I forgot about this. This was another practical print where I was doing the theater area. Well, I should call it a media center for my my living room, and I ran speaker wires down the wall, but I did not have a plate that would go in a decor style. And had I ordered one, it would have taken beyond the time that I wanted it, like 3 or 4 days later. And I only had time during the week to do it, during the weekend. And it was so $30 and waiting 4 days. I'm like, you know what? No, I'm going to design this thing, and it's going to work. And I'll tell you what, it made me real happy. That was an easy piece to do. I learned a lot in Fusion 360 with it, and that just another example of practical printing that works, and it's flush too with the faceplate that I used, so it looks great.
Yeah, I remember when you posted that, and I had done something similar to that, just single gang outlet covers. You can go to the store and buy one for 95 cents, but it was kind of neat to just be able to print one. Like, I needed one, and there it is. You just reminded me, I need to put it on my list of things to do. I have 2 light switches in my living room that need a new cover because the drywall was chipping around the cover. So I want to print a bigger one. There's something that you can't really buy that the 3D printer can resolve that issue. And that's the things that really makes me choose, you know, what I model versus what I download on Thingiverse or whatever. I print a lot of things that I can buy in the store, but it's more satisfaction to model it yourself. And once you model it yourself, then you can customize it.
So I'm going to tweet out, and I'll share the link in in the chat when I'm done. It's an outlet cover that I think Matt Gordon printed at Printed Solid. It's on his display shelf. I go to the Printed Solid thing like once a month. They have a 3D printing skill builder thingy every month, and so if you look at it, it's 3D printed. If you look at the back, but they finished it with this stone paint. It's like a speckle paint, and now they didn't sand it or anything. They just painted it with this, and it looks like something you would probably spend $10 for, for something comparable at Home Depot. So I'll share that. It's like a post-processing topic, I guess. Practical printing and post-processing.
Which is perfectly fine. Yeah, actually, I know exactly which one you're talking about. He's got some Bulbasaurs or something down there, too, the little planters that they painted with the same textured paints, which made me pick up a couple of different cans of that stuff. I still have yet to be able to figure out how to apply that properly. Mine always looks like crap when I do it. It looks nothing like what they have down there.
Yeah, here are a few of the prints I just grabbed. This is like a practical print. It's just a bottle opener. It's not very exciting in any way, but it's a practical thing, and I printed out of carbon fiber nylon filament I got from the maker box. So this is just a sample of thing that I printed and use, and nobody will give it any notice. Then there are things like those prints that go viral on the YouTubes and Twitters that the old bot. And I like to, when something goes around Twitter and everybody wants to be in on the hype, I sometimes pick that up. So those kind of prints happen. And then I have this print here. This is just a artistic statue that I like to have on my shelf just for looking at, and it's just a piece on a shelf. It has no practical, but just a artistic value. And then another thing that the community has created, the maker coins. I created my maker coin, and those are just made for fun, and I've been sending out my maker coins to other YouTubers, and that's something people in the community like to exchange when they meet. And here's another trinket, Thor's hammer. Everybody is printing out the big band hammers for their channels, and as I had just a small channel, I decided to create a small band hammer. So this is just a tiny hammer for my channel. So this is examples of prints that I do inspired by other people or what's going on in the community. So there's a lot of hyped up models like this one, and that I want to take part on doing, and that is a lot of prints like that I do.
All right, real quick here, we've got a new addition to the panel. Vicky, do you want to go ahead and do your intro, and then go ahead and go right into what inspires you for what you model, what you print, and how you finish your prints? You got yourself muted, I think, still, Vicky. Or we can't hear you one way or another. Yeah, still can't hear you.
Sound like you were as you were.
Vicky, if you can hear us still, which I'm sure you can, you were waving. Click on the gear up at the top there and just make sure you're the right microphone selected.
I'm like having a few technical problems.
What was that, Richard? You were garbled up. Yeah, now your microphone's still muted at the top, though. Vicky. No, nothing yet. You've been gone for so long. That's why it's not working. Go ahead and see if you can get that sorted out, Vicky. We'll get back to you again.
I got another one I'll show you in the meantime. So this was one that went over well. I was inspired by I think Jim Carter was one who printed a really big maker coin for Murph last year, and so I printed this and had everybody sign it at New York Maker Fair. I'm going to Murph, so I think I'm going to print a bigger one, and I'll have to glue it together, and then I'll bring that to Murph 2018.
Yeah, that was a neat idea. I was impressed with that when we were up there at Maker Fair. Somewhere on there's my chicken scratch of a signature.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find it.
Oh, I see it in the replay on YouTube right now. It's on one of the edges. I know that.
You mentioned about doing things like the plates, and yeah, you can go to the hardware store and get them. I live in a small country, big country, small community, and rural community, and we don't have a large box store down the road. So sometimes you just can't go, down the corner and get one. And even for the parts that you can, I find it's worthwhile that, hey, I'll go through the process of designing it and printing it, and that'll improve my skills. And I now have a place where, just like you're talking about your light switches, where my thermostat is mounted. There's a small hole behind there from the previous thermostat. And so I'm just in the process of designing some suitable artwork that I can print out, and it'll be the holder for thermostat in here. So you can get those things, you get those skills. That's always useful. For the light switches, there's one I haven't printed yet, but it is on my to-do list. And that is the Halloween switch, where it's the old electrical type contact that they have them for both the large switches and for the old style switches. But you throw that, and it's just a mechanical one that throws your actual light switch. That's a really cool looking thing to have on the wall.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I've seen those.
Go ahead, Martin. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I was just saying I've seen those switches he was talking about. It's like they have in the movies when they're electrocuting people, big chunky switches.
Yeah, the Frankenstein switch there.
Yeah.
John, were you going to say something?
No, I was just saying it's cool what Richard was talking about, what he developed. That's what I go for, the practical stuff right now.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you get a whole new world opened up to you when you learn that, hey, I can design something, have it on the computer, and then print it out and actually have the object. The stuff I haven't shown are the things that someone needs a part, and you design it and you print it out, and it goes off to them, and it's now sitting in the machine that they needed repaired, and it's up and running. Talk about the bearings. My brother has a machine that for a company that he bought it from, this is their lowest end product. They consider it a throwaway product. It's $500. Their normal machines are over $2,000. So they said, no, we don't have any parts for the low end ones. If it doesn't work anymore, throw it out, get another one. And it's a small part that's 10 millimeters high and took all of 10 minutes in Fusion 360 to design. It's an easy print. I did a test print for him, and I said, look, I'm going to print this in carbon fiber later. Just put this in and see how it fits. And he put that in about 4 months ago now, and it's still running on the test print. So I haven't gone into doing more for him until he's has a need for more.
We got another addition to the panel. Pete, you want to go ahead and do your introduction, introduce yourself, and
Yeah.
go ahead and give us an idea of what inspires you to print what you print?
Yeah, so I'm Pete from PanzserschreckDS. I'm just starting out as a streamer on Twitch. I pretty much deal with miniatures gaming and board gaming, plus 3D printing as it applies to that, which is actually almost now a fundamental part of my hobbies. The prints that inspire me are pretty much the ones that I've actually supported quite a few quick Kickstarters, commercial designs set for sale, and because they fit in with my needs, either the historical period of buildings that I'm looking to build, or things that I could get in resin, ready-made models, but would cost me thousands of dollars to do. I can print off for the cost of a single spool. I can print off 30 buildings. I mean, the economy in that speaks for itself. So yeah, I guess all my printing pretty much revolves either around printing for the printers or for my hobbies. So there's very little. I tend not to do, apart from calibration prints, I tend not to do a lot of the printing that I see in the community, just because, to be honest, I don't have the opportunity cost of printing. A lot of those prints is too much for me, because I need to print a lot of stuff, and I've only got half my print farm up and running at this time.
Now, when you say your print farm, how many printers do you have in your print farm?
6 now.
6 of them. I didn't realize you were up to that many.
Yeah, yeah. I picked up someone was selling another one house. So I've now got 3 one house DI3 pluses. So those things are workhorses. They just keep printing. And one modification, which is the fan shroud, and that's it. That's all I've needed to do. Yep. And plus, even for me, I can get them tuned in, so I'm wrapped.
Now, I forget. Do you model your own stuff, or do you download it?
I actually purchased the STLs files. I used to do actual analog modeling. I still do analog modeling. I cannot use digital design tools to save my life. I'm too old school for that. If I don't have a scalpel or a putty knife in my hand, I can't operate a mouse. I mean, I'd like to, but just the time to get, I can't dedicate enough time to get to a level where I'd be comfortable.
Now, so that'll kind of lead me into the next question. You might be one of the perfect people to ask this to. When you're looking at models online, say I know you print a lot of houses. What makes you choose one over the other? The things that you look at to make that decision?
Okay, so I want well, first off, if I'm download, if they're like on Thingiverse, then I'm going to obviously download them, see how they show up in Cura or something like that. But I do look at the style of the design for buildings. I also look at the level of detail. I look at whether I'm going to need to print with supports or not, because I try and avoid that. And even if there's not that much detail, as long as it doesn't look like something that's just been thrown together, if there's been a bit of attention paid to it, a bit of detail, a bit of individualist nature about, if it's not a cookie cutter design, if it's got textures and things like that, then I'm going to look at it a bit more seriously. The whole point of 3D printing for me is so I don't have to do a lot of additional labor intensive work after I print. I can basically print and paint. and rather than print, modify, accessorize, basically do a bit of extra modeling that I wouldn't need to if it was a reasonably complex design. But yeah, I look at how it's going to print for me. Am I going to be able to print it? And also, I also look as for gaming purposes, does it meet my needs? Is it actually suitable for gaming, or is it just a display model? So there's a little bit of that. And I also look at the design. Is it split up into parts? You know, can I resize it easily? Can it be split easily? Or have they been nice enough to actually break it down into subcomponents as well?
Now, I guess the other factor for you too is time frame.
Yeah. An average building for me will, if I load up the build plate, I can get about 9 pieces on the build plate for the one house. So that's around 3 buildings per build plate. That's an overnight print job. So set it running when I come home from work in the morning, or basically next day when I come back from work, I take it off and restart. And with 3 printers going, it racks up pretty fast.
Panzer, there, I think you got a window with your audio on there. Need to move. We're getting some feedback.
Yeah, we're getting a little bit of feedback from yours, I think.
From me?
Yeah.
Okay.
It seems like it might be gone now.
Yeah. Try that. Yeah, for one, it didn't. Oh, I'm still saying it, hearing it.
Now, when you, ooh, there was a lot of people. All right, let's try that now. Yeah, that seems to be better.
Okay.
Now, so moving into your post-processing when you're painting your models, how do you choose how you paint models? Is it based on the game that it's geared towards, or are there other factors that play into that? How do you decide how you're going to end up finishing a model?
Well, basically, it's hold on just for a moment. Looking at I look at what has to fit in with what the project is. So, for example, I'm going to be. The post processing is pretty simple. Automotive primer, undercoat, bit of weathering, varnishing. If I need to do additional details like that, then the post-processing it doesn't have to be. Flaws are actually useful to me. Flaws in the print can be useful. Unlike, say, a cosplay helmet or something like that, where you want a really awesome finish, smooth is my enemy. Smooth prints are my enemy. I need teeth on the model to hold the paint, and to just, because I'm using buildings and things like that, I'm basically looking at stuff that's going to hold the paint on with a minimum of extra print work. Yeah, I use filler. Everyone uses filler because there's no print's perfect. But the best thing I've got going for me is that 90% of the failed prints can be just cut up and reused. So, you know, a broken building, a failed print of a building can be used as a ruin. There I am. I'm done. So there's very little wastage, I've found. Even rafts I've found which have been useful. I actually now print with rafts because I find them useful in terms of a form of material to replicate chain link fencing and stuff like that.
Okay, so now I got to ask the question: what made you realize that, or come to that decision or that idea? Because that's actually kind of interesting. Most people, you pitch the raft over your shoulder into the trash can and move on. That's actually kind of. I saw a couple of people's heads perk up when you said that you utilize the rafts. That's pretty cool.
Well, I work in 1/100 scale, so the rafts actually have a really nice textured effect that can actually can almost replicate the look of cobblestone streets. So and this I just looked at it, I can use that. And I was doing the raft because I was having problems with a couple of designs, just adhesion to the bed, and they were actually it was at that point just because long thin walls I was having problems lifting with the first initial layers. So I thought I'll do a raft. I looked at the raft and I'd overdone it. I'd rather err on the side of a bigger raft than a smaller one when I was starting. And all of a sudden I realized that these things are actually useful. Yeah, I can, a raft for a single building, I can actually use for about close to half a foot of cobblestone roading. So
cool.
In 1/100. So
Ron in the chat wants to know if you have anything, excuse me, anything set up that you could show on camera, like
no, unfortunately I don't. I'm actually in the process of trying to get everything set up so I can actually bring some designs, some of the partial finished stuff, and actually show a setup of what I'm looking at doing. But that's mainly because I'm still in the early stages of setting up the stream. My biggest problem has actually been running into scripting issues. I'm OCD about the way I want to present it, and I've spent like 12 hours writing the first script and tossing it into the waste paper basket. Again, I'm analog. Everything gets run in paper and screwed up and thrown into the bin.
I find it interesting you're using automotive filler or primer. That's what I used with the FDM printing. Now that I've moved over to SLA printing, if this is showing up properly, you can see some of the specs on the horse here. That is areas where the primer did not adhere properly. So once again, the primer that was used on this was the heavy filler primer. And these are spots I never even noticed with naked eye. It wasn't until I got this new microscope here. I guess it's slightly out of focus, but we get the wrong camera for it for focusing. I realized that, if I'm going to take a detailed look, this stuff isn't going to work. And so I now have some of the fine model primer, which is really what's going to be needed for working on this.
For resin, I've always used fine model primers, usually spray from Gunsy Sangyo called Mr. Surfacer. That stuff is worth every cent. It comes in like grades of fineness and graininess that rival sandpaper.
Yeah. So, it does make a difference what sort of primer you have. Once again, with the resin prints, if you don't use a primer, this stuff, and this was just a test trying all sorts of paints on this guy. The paints don't adhere to the resins. You really do need something that the paints can adhere to.
Yeah, I use acrylics the whole time. I don't use, apart from the primer, and even now I'm actually moving to an acrylic-based spray primer. Yeah, with PLA, because I don't bother printing in ABS or PETG because there's no need for it. I wouldn't use anything other than acrylics. So getting that adhesion, that first coat, automotive primer, just from your local automotive shop, the cheapest brand automotive primer is usually good enough. The trick is knowing how to work with rattle cans so that they're actually warmed up prior to spraying with them.
Hey, Vicky, is your audio working now?
I don't know. You tell me.
Hey, there we go. Now we can.
I had to reboot my machine, it turned out, and then it wanted to do Windows updates. So everything was like sick child, Windows updates, bad audio. But I told Matt I was going to be here, so here I am. May not be here long, but I'm here.
Go ahead, Vicky. Go ahead and do your intro.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Vicky Somma. I'm from the YouTube station Tiga 3D, which is sparsely updated, but the holiday season, shopping season is almost over. Craft show season is almost over. So I'm expecting to resume video production in January of 2018. You can find me on Twitter at TJW. My Etsy shop is etsy.com/shop/Vicky Teagle. Yeah, so that's where you can find me. Did you want me to roll into inspiration?
Yep, go for it.
All right, I think I have two angles here reflecting on inspiration. I think a lot of my projects are inspired by loved ones. And making gifts for people in my family or people that I love. And example in the chat earlier, Chris was asking me what the wine was tonight. I do make a lot of wine stuff, but mainly that's because my mom likes wine, and my mom's also a school bus driver. So my second ever model was doing a school bus wine stopper, because I think I've used this line before. There's oddly not many products out there that combine alcohol and school bus driving. And so that was something I did for my mom when she was retiring, was the school bus wine stopper. And actually sells quite a bit. So, another big model that I've done is I had an ornament that very, very lucky, I got into the White House. I didn't plan. I mean, I didn't have any kind of reasonable expectation for it to get into the White House. But what I was trying to do was impress my husband. It was based off of the Library of Congress. And my husband loves the Library of Congress. So, it's just trying to please or impress my husband. And, just a pro tip, if you're trying to impress your spouse, getting invited to the White House is a really good way to do that. And then, I do a lot of filament switches and for color changes. And where that really started off was doing just little, oh my God, I love it. I love the puppy. I don't think anything I can say is as interesting or as cute as a puppy. But anyways, when I first started doing the multiple colors, I was doing birds, and that was stemming from my maternal grandmother. I was inspired by thinking about sitting in her bedroom and looking at her bird feeder and the different birds that she taught me. So, a lot of my ideas will stem from people that we woke up my bird, stem from the people that I love. But at the same time, and this could be a word of warning, when you really get deep into this design and 3D printing world, at least for me, it's like a virus in your brain, and you're always thinking, and you're always, things. And I walk through town and I see a building and I just see like the little rafters or like 45-degree angles. I'm like, oh my gosh, that'd be beautiful to print. I just love the shape of these windows. And like I'm at the gym and you're lifting weights and you're looking and you start to notice things like, oh, how the pulleys work and how they're making the movement. And you're like, how can I incorporate this into a moving piece? So it does start to just infiltrate your brain, and you're just looking at everything and you just start getting inspired by everything around you, like little cute puppies. And I'll let you guys continue.
Yeah, so we'll get this out of the way. This is our new addition to our family.
That's cool. Yeah, look at that.
His name is R2, which is short for R2D2.
Yeah, cool.
Is it a beagle?
Yep. He is, I think, 10 weeks old. I think.
Oh, nice. I had a beagle for, I think, about 15 years.
We have
I had a beagle that's across. That is, yeah, you've topped everything for awe factor there. Sorry, Max, you don't hold up a candle to it.
All right, so Vicky, when you're, do you do much post-processing to your models, or do you pretty much?
I'm sort of weak on the painting. I've done it, you know, through brute force. I'll paint models, and you don't get the or the client will be happy with it. That's one reason I started doing the color changes, is because I feel like I am weak on the painting. So this conversation when I came in has just been absolutely fascinating and inspiring.
Sorry, distracted. Yeah, I'm trying to catch up with the chat again. Shoot, I totally lost my train of thought. Sorry, guys.
Oh.
That's big enough he can crawl around over here.
If the puppy's gone, I think that's my cue to leave.
He stopped in, saw the puppy, and the big one.
Yeah, I want to show you one thing. I did this the other day. It's just a plate to do like a to and from to put on Christmas packages. Even though this is, I modeled this in Fusion 360 and the bells also. And this is like a practical print I did, but artistic in the same time. So these are just 3 different prints glued together. So
you did them single layer and then you glued them?
Yeah, just each color. And I did did a lot of those for all the packages we are sending out to over Christmas.
Yeah, it reminds me of Vicky's video. Wasn't it you, Vicky, that you had a video where you showed the technique of stopping and starting a print midway or something, pausing a print or something?
Done that too. If you're looking, if Tessa also did a series of color changes that were specifically with Abuzz Designs gift tags. Were you thinking of one that had the gift tags in it?
Just a filament change, because okay.
I have done videos like that.
Yeah. That's an area that I haven't gotten to yet. How to do some, like Chris, M. Chris P1. He said that at the last print solid that you just have to do a little bit of massaging to the G code prior to printing it to do a pause, and so you can do like a filament change or whatever. Yeah, that's an area that I want to get into next.
I've found it to be pretty addictive. You have a lot of power then when you're switching your colors, and I've also used it to pause and put mirrors in, or nuts or whatnot, which I think Matt has done as well.
Yeah, that's the video. That's the video that you did. I remember commenting on that last week or the week before.
Oh, I'm catching up on my comments, but I did see that where you told me how you found it from Joel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, so let me go back to like when I first started in 3D printing, which was not long ago. It was March I got my printer, right? So I didn't know what a slicer was, and I had the School of Hard Knocks, right? Print my first thing, print my first thing, it didn't stick, right? Then I had to calibrate the printer, doing the live Z change after seeing some people's texts or chats in Facebook 3D printing group. There's a whole area that I know I have to get into. And we talked about at the Printed Solid meetup was calibrating the printer. And they were like, somebody said that Joel Telling did a bridge from like one corner of his bed to the other, like a perfect bridge or something.
Yeah, on the G-Max, yeah.
Yeah. That's something I'd really like to get into.
I think the only one that's outdone Joel's was one person right after Joel did that, took a 3D pen, put a mark on the desk, and then went across the room or something with it. But I don't think that fully counts.
So, all right. So one other print that I did was I kind of joke about this. My son had a biology project last week. He had to make a 87 whatever strand DNA. So I'm like, crap, let me look this up. So we looked it up. My colleague, John, he found on Thingiverse OpenSCAD, right? So I didn't know what OpenSCAD, I kind of heard about it, but I didn't know what it was. That gave me an introduction into OpenSCAD. Mathematically generated the helix, right? And I printed it on a printer, and it had some bridging, right? Because it's got a bridge, and it came out okay. But I got a 97 on that project, on my son's project. So, but they painted it, so they really deserve the credit for having to paint it and organize the sequences and everything.
We got another newcomer. I'm not sure if he's ready or not. Pooch,
He's ready. Howdy ho, everybody.
Hey now.
Yeah.
Sorry I'm late. What did I miss?
You missed your introduction and what inspires you.
Oh my goodness! Everything you all inspire me, man. All the greatness. I constantly say I'm built on the shoulder of gods. I am Pooch, aka Repcord. I do some printing, do some 3D printing. I do some evangelism. I do a little bit of education stuff now. I can handle this stuff. A little echoey here. Sounding okay to you guys?
Yeah, you sound fine to us.
I don't know why I'm feeding back. All right. So inspiration. We're talking inspiration tonight.
Yep. Yeah. What inspires you to print the things you print, model the things you model, finish the prints the way you do? If you're looking at something on Thingiverse, say you're looking for one specific thing, but you find multiple versions of it on Thingiverse or whatever other model site, what things lead you to pick one model over the other when you have multiple choices? Stuff like that.
You know, let's see. Well, so what do I pick? What do I like to print? So first of all, the things that inspire me most are certainly being part of the community. I don't know if I'm repeating what other people say. I apologize, but you know, the I know it sounds hokey and stuff, but I've always said I'm a broad strokes maker. I don't have nearly the patience to do the finishing and stuff, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't make me try to hone my craft a little bit more. So when I see, you know, the Uncle Jesse's of the world, the Bill Duran's of the world, all those people out there, and it, you know, makes me think, you know, maybe I should be a little bit more open-minded towards sanding and, you know, finishing and painting and stuff like that. So learning something new every day. I mean, that's how I got into 3D printing in the first place. And, you know, making is such a broad thing. You know, we focus on 3D printing, and that kind of can allow you to make all kinds of different stuff, practical prints, cosplay and whatnot. But, you know, the main inspiration is bettering myself, learning something new. And when I see stuff on Thingiverse that I'm interested in printing and stuff, I like looking to see what makers have. I kind of look at rating. I look at commentary. I look at who's an original creator versus a remixer. Sometimes, you know, I think it just depends on what the application is. Can you give me a sense of maybe what some other people's answers were, just like really briefly?
Well, the community was definitely one that was a couple people had said that.
Yep.
Which yeah, I think all of us see what everybody's printing, and it definitely either gives you an idea or makes you say, hey, I want to print that too. I want one of those on my desk. Or I could use that. Let's see. Martin had mentioned about, you know, like with his landscape prints, a lot of it is different areas around Iceland that he enjoys, that he's visited, and in some cases remote areas, I believe it was, he may not be able to actually visit, stuff like that. Pete said about the gaming aspect of it, and both how simplistic to an extent things are to print determines what he prints, and time's a factor for him with running the print farm. John and I both said about practical prints are definitely up there in things that keep us busy with the printers. Richard, we all know Richard's got the trains and his horses that he's doing, and
yeah, looking good there, Richard.
Yeah, he's got his top hat on.
Well,
am I missing it, guys?
Well, I said family. I think I'm
family.
One.
Yeah. It seems like most everything I've printed here recently has been family inspired one way or another.
You know, I gotta say something really quick, because Happy Extruder brought up a point that I appreciate him reminding me of. That so I do sell a lot of rep wrap as a means of supporting what I do, and a lot of my inspiration is driven by what I see people out in the community wanting to print, and I want to get a sense of how the products I use perform. And so, yes, there's a commercial motivation for me as well. But given that I need to test filaments and stuff all the time, I love, jumping on board. It seems like, there's the hot model of the month that comes up, whether it's something Luby did or Augustin Fallistick or the the Moon Matter Hackers. What's the Matter Hackers astronaut's name? Phil.
Filament.
Yeah, Filament. So it's cool to feel like you're part of that, and to see what everybody's printing. The Joelbot, of course. Everybody had to get a Joelbot out, right?
This was.
Ooh.
I don't know if it does any justice. See if I can backlight it some. I got too much forward light from my monitor, but you may know what this is, Pooch. It's your
that's
Purple
my
Haze base.
Is that the Purple Haze? It's coming across really blue on that.
I'll post a link from Instagram or Twitter, whatever. But I got a really good picture of it.
That looks solid.
So I got to say that you inspire me in that you're providing a product that was really awesome to print. I mean, this thing came out amazing. Like, I'm just thrilled with it. And the picture that I got was in front of my monitor. I set my monitor to a white background and got the picture. So I'm going to look that up on Twitter and post it.
When you held that up, I thought too, it came across on the camera really blue. I was going to say, Pooch, I want that blue filament.
I don't have a blue that's quite like that. But yeah, no, I remember you putting the picture up.
I want to really be conservative with that filament. Because it's just so awesome. So now I got to think about the next thing to do with it.
Was that on the Prusa?
Yeah, that's all I have. Yeah, I'm the one guy in this group that only has one printer.
How do you live with one printer?
Well, I have other things that I do to keep my time, like putting LED lights up around rooms and stuff. So
that's a very good point, though. When you have more than one printer, you feel obligated to run them all, and it's too much.
Yeah, I only have one Prusa, but another one is on the way. Will be shipped next week, the MK3.
I was late to that party. I don't get mine until January, but I'm excited I'm getting it.
Well, I have to admit that I haven't turned on my Prusa since I got the Moya here. I've been so into the SLA printing, focused on it. So, but I know I have some print work to do that'll have to go on there, but I'll have to pry myself away from the Moya first.
I must be the only person who doesn't have a Prusa on order.
Yeah, when I'm doing the landscape print, they tend to go like 18 hours or 20 hours. So often at times I want to print something else, and I decided to get a MK3 to have two printers.
That's an excellent choice. So that's how it starts, and before you know it. What now, Martin? I have a question though. What happens once you've printed the entire landscape of Iceland? Where are you going to go next?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sending those out, so I'm not collecting them myself. so I'm sending them out to YouTubers. So there's a lot of people on my list still. So
Well, it's been in the news that you have a volcano that might wake up again soon, and Iceland will just sort of remodel itself, and then you'll have to do it again.
yeah, yeah, we have one that was waking up. It goes every like 400 or 600 years, but it's due, so it might go in the next 5 to 10 years, I think.
Yeah, Martin, I'm actually, in fact, this is something that I didn't actually think about until now, but your landscape prints are actually one of my inspirations because they're of an interest to me in terms of I work with terrain making and things like that, and so painting and things like that in the post-processing. So being able to look at your prints and the way you finish them is actually very helpful for me as well, but also of interest for me down the road in printing them and post-processing them myself, because they're just a different type of shared interest for me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I enjoy creating those prints, and about color changes, I often run into this when I'm printing. I run out of filament and have to change filaments, but this is not on purpose. This just needs to happen sometimes.
Oh, that was a what was that you printed?
This is a landscape.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and this is the backside.
Right.
I had a filament change in the middle of it, so this happens pretty often.
The landscapes, yeah, you can do so much with them. Been talking to some gamers, they want terrain made, but also, once again, back with the museum, some of the more prominent areas of landscaping we have out here, looking at scanning that in, printing it out, and that can go on our layout of the area on there. So, yeah, we're not, it's a different scale to deal with, but you can do have some fun with it. And yeah, post-processing can be a head scratcher. Holding it out there against the real rocks and going, oh, my paint job is not holding up. I have to do more work here.
Yeah, your audio was breaking up a bit. It was like static noise in the audio.
No.
Yeah, I don't know, Richard, if you're using like a USB mic or something, maybe unplug it and plug it back in might fix that.
Net neutrality is hidden.
I wanted to be the first one to throw that out there.
Yeah, who brought that up?
Yeah, I'm leaving. See you.
Yeah.
Just a reminder real quick for anybody who's not paying attention to the chat. There is a description. You can see the logos here, something like that. You got 5 more minutes yet to vote on the logos. Links in the chat as of right now. There's 2 links to the chat to the voting. We have a 3rd one too, and then there's down in the description. So if you guys are watching but you're not active in the chat or you don't have the chat open, in here you get 4 more minutes. The voting ends at 11:30 Eastern. So at 11:30, then I'll pull the totals and we'll announce who won which logo I should say won for the favorite.
Check 1 2. Am I here? Am I back?
That sounds a little bit better.
Okay, yeah, my my little amp here took a dive off the desk. So
yeah, much better.
So, in other words, Richard, your inspiration is to print a holder for the.
My inspiration is to organize my desk, actually, but having just added 2 more cameras, I have to get things organized again.
Let me know if you get around to that, because I keep saying that too.
I've been saying it for years. It still hasn't happened. have to turn this into somebody else's room so I can come organize them. I'm good at doing that.
I have no choice. I have to clean my room. It becomes a guest room at Christmas for my in-laws. So somehow they just absolute mess over here. I've just got shipping stuff everywhere. It's just a mess.
I'm like, no, I'm not the only person with an offense that can stumble over that. It's great.
I don't even want to show you guys the rest of the apartment, which is basically my creative studio. It's just a bomb site. I've just had like 7 Kickstarters arrive of boxes of games, and they're packing materials everywhere. And I'm trying to get the painting room and modeling room set up for streaming, and it's not happening.
Well, it's made a real difference getting the workshop up and running. Lived here for 3 years now. This summer, the drill press did officially leave the kitchen. And 2 weeks ago, all the lumber left my living room. So I'm not even storing lumber in my living room anymore. So, and I'm going to get a bunch of room back. Brenna left the printer here, but she'll be picking that up in a few weeks. And then I'll have more space to work into.
All right. Does anybody else have anything as far as what inspires you? Be 3D related, but just anything in general, your inspirations and where you get it from.
Yeah. So
one thing I wanted to mention was hearing stories from kids, and they get so cool into that. Things I wouldn't even consider. Things like when I was talking to someone and they had their small kids there, and I was showing them my horses. They're wondering if I could print flies, something I wouldn't even consider doing, but they were just so focused in on that. And so, yeah, you want to get in and see what else you can get into. They just have such a different imagination that you can go to. That's actually one of the things why I like, unfortunately he's not here, but Xander, he's growing up with this stuff. He's 11 years old, and he has a different viewpoint. So it's great to watch what he's doing.
So, absolutely. I couldn't agree with that more. When we went down to Nova back in March last year, it was totally inspiring to see what all those kids were doing. Not just 3D printing, but I mean, we left there blown away with inspiration. And for the weeks after that, I kept thinking back to the different things that we saw these kids doing, and it really made you want to get out and either do something, make something, or learn something. It was really cool to see what those kids did.
Well, we had a portable maker bus come through, and they had 6 printers in there, and kids were lining up, and they got basically 30 minutes of design practice, and then they got to make a simple model. And it was fascinating, to see what they're coming up with, but their conversations afterwards, but, oh, I can do this and I can do that. And of course it comes up to, Mom, can we get a printer?
Yeah, my son often comes to me and asks me to print out models from his video games or some models he has seen. He started this 3D printing YouTube thing with me, so he initially had a lot of ideas on to print. So he's every now and then asking me to print something for him.
For me,
Right,
actually,
go ahead.
Sorry.
No,
For me, it's the community. The community really is a huge inspiration for me because I'm just starting out, really. And the idea of being able to just pick people's brains because they're so willing to share their hard-earned lessons that they've learned over time and their experience has been a revelation. I'm used to historically dealing with creative communities that are very secretive about techniques. Sadly, it's a real indictment of those communities. And 3D printing community in general is what I've found is incredibly supportive, from the biggest streamers to the smallest. And one of the things that I'm really looking forward to is I travel a lot overseas for gaming and things like that, but I actually want to start traveling overseas to attend things like Maker Fairs and Murph and stuff like that, because I'd like to actually meet some of the people I've made friendships over the net with, just like I did with my gaming tournaments. It's a sense of family, I guess.
Yeah, I can say the same. I didn't know any of you guys half a year ago. And a lot of people I'm talking about 3D printing on Twitter, they've become good friends. So it's a great community, and you post a question on Twitter, and people start to answer, and you always get help. And it's like you say, it's like a one big family. And it doesn't matter where in the world you are.
Yeah, we definitely are all, I think, all fortunate to have the community that we have.
Just expand on that slightly, like the fact that we have not only community but international community, just the reach, the fact that it's like the commonality that we've got people in Europe, we've got people in Australia, we've got people all over the globe that are in this, and just like, I don't know, it just makes it that much more invigorating. I love that stuff, but maybe it's just me.
You know, to add on to that, Pooch, and then we'll get to these logos. The widespread, the worldwide side of this community. It's funny you say, and about the reach that we have, is the other day, about 2 weeks ago, I bought one of the quadcopters, one of the DJI Phantom. Bought a Phantom 3, took it back, and got a Phantom 4. One of the features that I was playing with on Tuesday on the Phantom 4 is live streaming from the drone, which we followed. Our local fire department had Santa Claus riding on the engine around town for the kids to see, and we followed him on the drone and live streamed it to Facebook. And next thing you know, Tessa, Sparky Face 5, was on there commenting on the video. In real time, we were able to chat back and forth, and it was cool. I said to my daughter, I said, she's from Australia. And Dixie goes, where's that? I said, it's almost on the other side of the world. And her eyes just lit up. Like, it's cool to be able to say, you know, we've got all these people that we call friends that are everywhere around the world. I mean, Maker Faire, meeting everybody. You had, oh crap, now I'm drawing a blank. Well, you had Maker's Muse come in from Australia for Maker Faire New York, and Kat. Kat came from
Liechtenstein.
Liechtenstein, thank you. I always want to say Germany for some reason, but Liechtenstein.
No, don't call Liechtenstein Germany. They don't like it.
Yeah, no. Getting to meet them in real life for the first time, meeting Pooch, meeting Travis, just getting to meet everybody when we went down to Nova, meeting Vicky. It's cool how this community is, when you sit back and you look at it, it really is so small of a world that we're connected into. We all met up in New York, and it was like we've been friends forever. So get down off that soapbox. With that said, it is after 11:30, and at 11:30, I pulled the totals for the logos. So in what I'll do is we'll talk about each one of the logos here, and the least votes, we'll knock that one off, and we'll go to the next one. So the first photo or logo that took fourth place is the extruder one. Let's see if I can do this. That one right there. That one was the one with the least votes. Number 4. I forget. I forget how I even got this one. Richard, I think somebody sent this one to you, didn't they?
Yeah, they sent it to me, and I'm trying to think of who it was.
Who was that?
Was it
I
Roman?
had the name. Go.
Yep.
For that.
There he is. He's on chat right now.
USS. You're right. Okay. So that was this one here. That was 4th place. So we'll take that one out. I gotta pull it back up. 3rd place was this one. That one right there. The spaghetti logo. That was actually submitted by Nillabean, who sent the message along as well that he hopes to get onto one of the streams here in the near future. With Nillabean. He opened a video game, a gaming store, not just video games, but like even like the card games. Sort of your local, what's he call it? LOG. Local
Golden Goblin.
I saw that, but he needs to. Why he's not doing more social media around that is beyond me.
He has a YouTube channel for it. Has been posting videos for that. I don't know if he has Twitter and Facebook for the store yet or not. I would imagine Facebook he probably does.
I've seen some pictures of the store on Facebook, but it might be his personal one. But it looks amazing.
Just flat out getting it up and running at the moment. Yeah. Having worked as a sole trader as a gaming store, bricks and mortar, it's just so much work, and I'm just gobsmacked at how well he's done.
Yeah. So his time's been tied up with opening the shop up, getting that up and running,
and he has a new baby in the mix too. And those things can.
He just had his daughter's probably what, 6 months old or something like that now.
Is she even that much?
I would feel even younger, I'd guess, but
might even be. You might be right.
Yeah. But a young one in a store, so maybe changes for him.
Yeah. I was surprised after knowing he had a baby to find out then that he was also opening a shop. I thought, man, that's a lot.
Glutton.
All right. Yeah. He did, like I said, he left the comment there that he does plan on getting into the Friday night streams again and getting a little bit more active again in the 3D printing community as well. So we look forward to his return. So that was that one. We'll take that one away. 2nd place was a submission from Clarissa from the Make and Fake channel, or Make It and Fake It channel. That would be, I'm bad at this pointing thing. That would be this one here. That took 2nd place. And of course, then that leaves this one here for 1st place. Yeah. That one. This one's going to take 1st place and will become the official logo for F3D PCH. This was submitted by Mike, otherwise known as NLTMW.
Yeah.
On the Twitters and the YouTubes and everything. So this is what we're going to end up using as the official logo and banner.
Nicely done, Mike.
Yeah.
I think they would convert well to be little bottle openers too.
I agree. I saw the same thing.
Maybe we could do Jeff's Vineyard can actually do a limited bottling of wine with that logo. That's the label.
Is it just me, or are they breaking up there?
A lot of breakup there.
Yeah, we were only getting like every other word, and then it was ahead of itself, and it was all over the place. If you're using a USB mic, if you're using a USB mic, try to unplug it and plug it back in. Sometimes that'll fix that.
Yeah, I just realized that today is my 2 years.
Happy anniversary.
Dude, yeah, thanks.
YouTubeversary.
YouTubeversary, yeah, that's right.
I'm just getting caught up on the chat from doing those logos.
How many subs are you up to?
I think over 400. Gain the rate of about 400 a month at the moment.
Boy.
Thanks.
Congrats.
Yeah, Rover and the Happy Extruder, they participate in a lot of my live streams where I game. They witnessed a lot of crazy stuff.
I'm so glad and so proud that my brother's the one in the chat who had to point out the fact that I can't point in the right direction.
It's backwards, man. It's super hard. You don't know which way.
It is, because it's mirrored on here, and then when I'm looking at the Hangout, it's mirrored again, so it really throws everything off. That's why for a couple of streams, anything I put up always reversed the text, like my logo and stuff in the corner was reversed because it looked right to me.
Of course, we didn't say anything. I just
You guys didn't either. You let me go the first couple of times.
Technique of bending the arm over. And, yeah.
All right. So I do want to say thank you to everybody who submitted the logos. We really appreciate your effort. And so,
yeah, what does Mike win for winning? What's the?
I don't know. We never came up with a prize besides, I guess, bragging rights.
You know what you should do is you should shave your beard and send it here.
Yeah, with my wife.
Matt, did you say you were going to do some kind of printing project based on the logo, right?
I am. I haven't. Actually, Mike does kind of know what I was up to with that, but I haven't publicly said yet what I'm doing. But yeah, there is a future project that I've got to get done between now and I'll give the hint March. So, so yeah, that was the idea. One of the requests that I had was that you keep 3D printable in mind. Now, that didn't mean that like it couldn't be a hard thing to print, but something that can be modeled. So Mike's, I was kind of excited to see his pull into the lead just because I was like, oh, I can easily model this for what I want to do. So congratulations, Mike.
Yeah, I want to see the print.
He gets to clean up the smaller versions as a reward.
What was that, Richard? You were really quiet.
Oh, I was just saying in the comments there, it's his reward is he gets to clean up the smaller versions.
Clean up the smaller versions.
Yeah, his reward was for work.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so since we are close to the 2-hour mark, let's do the typical 2-hour outros, and then we can keep going after that if you guys want to. I'm gonna start with Pooch, just because you're the furthest one on the left on my list now.
Which way is left?
I'm not pointing.
I'm Pooch. You can find me at everything Repboard, YouTube's, Twitter's, Instagram's, Facebook. I do a little something I like to call the Wednesday Hump Day wrap up. I've been on hiatus for the last 2 months, but I'm working on my glorious return. So hopefully we'll do some more of that stuff if the interwebs here continue to cooperate. And I'm just really honored to be a part of this fantastic community. Thank you so much.
On the subject of community, for it yesterday. The Schrodinger's cat.
Like you're really breaking up. I heard Schrodinger's cat.
And there's an echo.
Try that again, Vicky.
I was just saying that on the subject of community, he sent me a shirt, and I was wearing it yesterday.
Oh, I love it. I've got mine too. Let's coordinate, Vicky, so we can wear them on the same day. We'll tweet about it. It'll be fantastic.
You do make the maker too, right? Because it was during a run, so it was a maker effort.
It was make them. You were wearing your Schrodinger's cat. That's awesome. Fantastic. I'm glad to hear it.
I'm not sure what's going on there. I know everybody's kind of getting a little bit of breaking up, so I'm not sure if YouTube's having an issue or what, but we'll try to push through it here with the outros. Martin, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Marteinn, and I have a channel called 3DP Iceland, or 3D Printing Iceland. I mainly focus on doing landscape models, printing them out and painting one of those, and I've been sending those out to other YouTubers. I also do some filament testing videos on the MakerBox samples that I receive, and several prints around the house. So and I'm on Twitter as 3DP Iceland and on YouTube as 3DP Iceland. So that's my channels.
Hey. And Richard.
Oh, hey, channel is Zidim, Zidim, and I'm live every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time. I focus in on using 3D printing for model trains, and my main focus for the last while, on top of the horses, is the fact that I'm learning how to do SLA printing. So going into the wonderful world of dealing with resins and fighting with supports. And so I'm Zidim.com is the website, Zidim17 on Facebook and Twitter. Facebook also is 3D printing for model trains.
All right, and Pete.
Yeah, I'm Pete from PanzserschreckDS, or Design Studio. I'm basically just starting out on streaming on Twitch. Let's see, links on below the stream, twitch.tv//PanzserschreckDS. I know it's an absolute nightmare to spell, but hey, it is what it is. I do miniatures gaming, all sorts of genres, board gaming, and I stream sometimes the board gaming because I do a lot of the board gaming using an online interface. And basically my 3D printing is pretty much run for my gaming, for my hobbies, which I do pretty much modeling and painting. All analog, no digital.
All right, John.
All right, first I'd like to bring attention to Earth. So that's Earth 2018. Keep that on the books. I'll throw the link in here, and just make sure you pay attention to the date. I think we're talking the last week of June, right, Vicky? Is that right?
Yes, I think so. Hold on.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm
Any update on location yet?
I think it might be the second to last weekend in June, I think. Is Nick still on?
Yeah, next one.
Yeah, because I think it was like, isn't it the 23rd and 24th?
Well,
I guess that's the last full weekend in June. There's a 30th on June too.
Is it going to be at Nick and Lauren's house?
No, that's a delightful. I bet that's a very good venue. We need to put that in the running.
I'll bring the rum.
Perfect.
Yeah, so I'm John. What do you do? Started my channel. I have to make a correction. It wasn't the 15th. I just checked. It's the 23rd. Originally, it was started as a DIY, but I built a CNC machine like, I don't know, 10 years ago or something. Built it from scratch. My inspiration there was for N-gauge railroading, model railroading. And then the funny thing is I never use it to build anything for model railroading. I use it to make signs and stuff. So that's kind of the weird thing about that. I just wish that I started YouTube a long time ago. So for all of us who's in here, you probably already are a creator. So this is kind of not relevant to you, but if you're not on YouTube and you have a skill set, I'd say just start. The first video is the hardest one, and then it gets easier after that. I started 3D printing in March, and I'll tell you, there's a lot to learn about 3D printing. I gotta say, I'm probably a skimming the surface. Like, I haven't even calibrated my printer beyond just doing live Z. But I guess that's a testament also to the build of the Prusa printer, right? That I'm able to print without having to really go through a major calibration, unless I'm getting into something crazy. So the DIY stuff that I do, home remodeling, my house now, it's a piece of crap house that we bought, and I'm doing one room at a time. So the first room was my son's music studio. I have to finish the hallway, but I have big plans to do LED lighting throughout the entire house. And I even want low voltage lighting, you know, the shadow boxes that you have like in the area of like wainscoting. I plan on doing backlit wainscoting shadow boxes, and I'm going to use 3D printing to do all that stuff. So that's it.
Cool. All right. And we got Vicky. Uh-oh. Is Vicky frozen for everybody else?
Yeah.
Hey, there.
Oh, it's my turn, isn't it? Okay. Yeah. So I'm Vicky Somma again. You can find me on Twitter at TGAW. In 2018, when I start doing videos again, you can find my YouTube station at youtube.com/tgol3d. I have an Etsy shop. See, I don't make it easy. I have different ones, different variations everywhere. Sorry?
Yep,
As the audio?
Yeah, that was just the audio.
Oh, okay. Just everything all over again?
I heard what you were saying. The last thing you said was Etsy shop.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, my Etsy shop is /shop/Vicky TJW. And I have a website, www.tjaw.com. So I just want to echo what everybody else says, is this is a really great community, and I have nothing but positive and supportive experiences from this community, and thank you for letting me be a part of it.
And thank you for being a part of it, Vicky. You're definitely one of the originals, I would say, as far as the YouTube content creators for 3D printing and drawing. You were one of the ones who've helped draw the crowd that we have now.
Yikes. Oh, well, thanks.
So I'm Matt. This is the How I Do It channel that you guys have been watching. Every other Friday night, we do the F3D PCH, or the Friday 3D Printing Community Hangouts. We do not have a host yet for next week to be able to announce tonight, or not next week, 2 weeks from now, which I believe is going to be the last week of December. It'll be January 29th, 2017. So it'll be the last Friday night hangout of the year. As soon as we have a host, hopefully here, I'm trying to get them done through the weekend after the stream, if we don't already have one set up for the following stream. So if you want to host, get in touch with the F3D PCH Twitter account, or we do have an email address for the Friday night hangouts. It is f3dpch@gmail.com. There's the Facebook group for the public to be able to keep up to date, and what I've been doing now is creating events for each one of the streams. So if you search on Facebook for F3D PCH-public, that's the one that's open to everybody to join. And if you're interested in being on the stream, there's the F3D PCH-streamers account or group on Facebook. That one, you do have to have some kind of recognition in the community. Doesn't have to be a YouTube channel, but activity on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, any of those. Just something that we can say, yeah, we know who this person is. You don't have that kind of recognition, be active. And what we're trying to do is prevent that the host channel has to deal with anybody who goes rogue or anything like that we've never met before, which this community is growing rapidly, and we're constantly getting people on here that we've never met before. This is just sort of a way to kind of vet it a little bit to make sure that, if everybody in the group says, hey, no, that person causes a lot of drama or they troll everywhere, that's what we're trying to prevent. Trying to keep it as clean as possible, and that way it's successful and continues to go. So with that said, I want to thank everybody for joining us for the first 2 hours of the stream. And again, shout out to the designers of the 4 logo submissions that we had. Real quick, while I'm rambling here, Pooch, if you didn't already, check your DMs on Twitter.
Just saw it. Sending you right now.
Did you? Okay. Yeah, thanks for the submissions that we got, and thanks for everybody for voting on them. And we'll probably tomorrow at some point I'll upload the new images to Facebook, Twitter, all that stuff, and I'll get working on my project for that. So the last thing that I want to say here before the 2-hour mark, Pooch kind of put an idea in my head when he asked what the prize was for the logo submissions. So we decided,
so Pooch is on the hook.
Pooch is on the hook since he brought it up.
Happy to do it.
We're going to hook Mike up with a roll of the famed Repcord 3D printing filament.
Maybe even 2. You never know. It depends how generous I'm feeling. No, he can pick. He can pick his color as long as it's one of the colors I have.
Yep. So there's surprise. Yeah, surprise last minute reward for the submission. Mike, if you're still on here, get in touch with me. If not, I'll get in touch with you through Twitter to claim your prize.
It can be a Ford-style giveaway. He can choose any color he wants as long as it's black.
As long as it's black. Got plenty of black.
And Mike is in the chat. It's really necessary the group. Mike, it's a huge. I know go to logo is that. So definitely worth it.
Really breaking.
Yeah. Boy, this bad connection tonight.
Yeah, I think it's.
Yeah, I've lost all sound.
All right. Really?
Yeah, it's getting bad.
Well,
everybody's streaming Stranger Things right now.
Do you guys want to keep going, or
I'm okay.
Do we want to try to cut it here because of the way Hangouts is acting tonight?
Well, we can go on a little bit longer. It comes and goes.
I don't know if anybody got any of that. It all cut out for me.
Oh, that's a bummer. I'll hang in if the internet hangs in with it.
All right.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3 is this.
Can you hear me now?
Chris, the echo's not all in your head.
Yeah. Pooch.
Yes, sir.
Can you hit mute on your mic at the moment?
You want me to hit mute?
Yeah. How we got that? Are we getting someone else on mic?
Let's see. Are we getting any more echoes or not?
It's better.
I'm not hearing anything. It doesn't seem to be cutting out for me.
There we go.
It's Pooch's fault. Yeah, so what I was saying, I don't know how bad it was cutting out. Mike did say in the chat that the rolls of filament weren't necessary. I just wanted to say, yes, they are. We want to show our appreciation for you doing it, even if you did it just for the community. I know graphic design isn't, it's just like 3D modeling. It's, well, I shouldn't say it's just like, it's a lot like 3D modeling. Your time goes into it. Your time's valuable. And we're going to obviously get some use out of that. So I want to hook you up. And I know Pooch does too. So we'll still get it to you, Mike. Unless you ignore it, don't give us an extra.
Now? So like
it's really
you were
bad.
breaking up.
Yeah.
all right, I'll bow out then.
Do you have a window open tucked away somewhere?
Real quick, just want to say bye to Vicky. She messaged that she's going to be heading out. So thank
Bye,
you
Vic.
for coming. I appreciate you stopping in, Vicky.
Yeah, nice talk.
Good night, Vicky.
Glad that I didn't have to be a liar. You know, I'm going to come, and then all these obstacles, but I came.
You made it.
All right. Good night, Vicky. Thank you again.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna cut out also. It's 5 a.m. in the morning for me, so I'm a bit tired.
Grouper.
Yeah, Martin's become a regular on the streams, but he's also, what, the stream start at like 3 in the morning for you or something like that?
Yeah, 3 a.m.
Well, thanks. Thank you, Martin, for joining us again tonight. Thanks for your input. Thanks for your being our inspiration to print some landscape stuff as well.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So I'll see you.
Oh, Vicky was talking about problems there. I found out last Friday a real major problem in that I ordered some resin early November. We got to Calgary, Alberta on November 15th, and then customs put it aside. And they said 3 of the bottles didn't have labels. And when you get resin, these are the bottles it comes in. And if you get any resin on it, it just peels right off. And they pack these super tight. This is from P.O. Poly. It's great resin. And I'm quite happy working with the company. But my guess is when customs pulled it out of their containers, they're super tight. The labels just peeled right off. But they told me, well, we got 3 bottles here out of 6. 3 are missing labels. It came from Asia. We're sending it to our drug lab. And if you do get it, you will be getting it from 2 to 8 months from now. And I said, well, can you just send those bottles and the ones that had labels, can you send them to me? They know if it is drugs in there, it's a criminal matter. Your entire shipment is being held.
2 to 8 months?
Yeah.
That's a range.
And the first shipment I got here in days. It just went like that. So I said, not a problem. I'll order some more. And I got this to deal with. And it actually took me 3 weeks to talk to a human. That's calling every day, dealing with message machines, everything else, and finally got a hold of a human that knew what was going on. And I ended up 2 humans. The first human said, I'll give a message to the supervisor. I finally got a hold of the supervisor. But oh, what a nightmare. To have basically $400 because there's other things other than resin in there, but that's all tied up at customs and nothing can really be done about it. And, you know, you're dealing with the government there. What a pain.
Which government?
That's the Canadian government. Now, I thought,
Canadians have a government?
I talked to someone else and they're going, oh, you had it shipped to the States because they had the same thing happen to them. I don't know what state they're in, but anyways, it's not unique to the Canadian government.
Ron wants to know what the shelf life is on the resins. I think it's kind of more of a sarcastic question, but it's useful information.
Oh, well, that's the thing. It's the shelf life's pretty good as long as they're not exposed to UV. It's the UV that kills the resin. I actually, in 2 months of doing a lot of printing, I'll bet, why I print's pretty small. I'm just at the bottom of my first half liter. That's all I've used. So I had a very early learning process. This was the very first horse I printed. And I totally messed it up left, right, and center. It's solid. If you take a look at that guy there, you'll see that there are buttholes in this horse. And the reason is you put 2 holes in your object, you hollow it out in mesh mixer. You have 1 hole for the air to go in and another hole for the resin to drain out. So when you're doing that, you just have a thin shell of resin on that. And a little bit of resin goes a long way. And
the other thing, since Ron asked our last question, apparently now that it is officially after midnight, it is Ron the Happy Extruder's birthday. So happy birthday, Ron.
Oh, hey, happy birthday.
Ron, sincere happy birthday wishes, my friend.
I'll do you the curse, not singing for you. Just wanted to show off this and the other toy there. I have a USB camera, and just playing with this thing has been a joy. Being able to see the details, and it's not just the prints. You just all sorts of things. It's like being a kid again. Oh, what does that look like close up?
I'm gonna run here real quick. I'll be back in like 2 minutes. Go ahead and converse away, guys.
So, Pete, are you been dealing with any companies like Printable Scenery for gaming?
Yeah, I've been actually. They're actually, I'm probably one of their bigger clients. Yeah, so the Printable Scenery, there's a German gentleman who's printable 3D printable terrain, I think but he's started out as well, but he's been doing very nice themed collections. So he did his first lot were buildings from Alsace-Lorraine. He then did a series of Normandy buildings, desert buildings, modern German buildings, German World War II era and Napoleonic era German buildings. He's about to launch an Italian and Spanish range, and he also did Russian Eastern Front range. So he's got a lot of money out of me, usually around 40 euros a campaign. But I mean, I just look at it. It costs given the quality of the designs and the fact that everybody out there who's designing tends to build for build platforms. They used to design for build platforms of around 150 by 150 max. Now they build, they actually cater the models down to basically around 150 by 150 as a minimum size now, because very few printers these days have a build volume less than that. But yeah, printable stuff is awesome. It just takes so long to print because it is so detailed, and you don't want to lose any of that detail, so you slow everything down because you're going 0.2 or even 0.1 at times.
Yeah, I've been quite impressed with their stuff, and I keep thinking it's a wonderful business model to follow for trains. If I had the skills there to build up a library that way. But no, it's fascinating to see what they come up. And every time I talk to gamers, I say, "Have you taken a look at the site?" and point them that direction. you know, I just went over 500 subscribers, so I'm chatting with them about adding something for a giveaway there. But no, I love their stuff.
They're an interesting group of guys, because Matt Barker, I think, works, or still works, I think, for Weta workshops in Wellington in New Zealand. So they've basically got access really to basically anything, the power of Weta Digital. And so, you know, that sort of design mentality and skill set, that's a huge advantage over the self-taught guys, because they're used to actually designing for printing for their movies.
Right. Yeah. Well, actually, that's why my daughter got into the printing, because she's, you know, works art departments for film and television, and that got her going there. And then her boyfriend's into the same thing, and you know, he does the 3D printing. But he also does well, basically, he has a maker lab in his garage. Almost every tool he can think of, he has it there. They're out doing the Star Wars thing. They've been hanging around in full stormtrooper uniforms and everything for the premiere. But no, the film industry. Well, Brenna said that there was one night they needed a item. They about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, they started a print in his shop, and then at 7 o'clock in the morning, they had the print on set. So it's a great tool for that industry.
Yes, I just so it's just quite incredible what's the difference that 3D printing is making in terms of in general everyday pastimes. Yeah, I'm blown away by the level of design quality that's out there already, and people are actually, and just in my niche area, people are actually making a bit of an economic go of actually designing for purchase. I think that's actually in the war games and miniatures gaming area, particularly in dungeon for the role-playing groups as well. You can print off an entire 3D dungeon for less than 1/10 of the cost of buying it in resin, and it's purely customized, and you don't have to buy multiple packs of resin parts just to get the right number that you want of one particular area. And I think that's where the economics of it made sense to me.
Now, I was already introduced to printable scenery through Nilabine, and it was interesting. The one day he was talking about it, he was trying to calculate how many parts he needed to print, and he found out by default there's a real easy way to do that, and that is toss it into a slicer. And he laid out what he wanted for his dungeon in there, and then, okay, I need so many of these parts and so many of those parts and so on. So he was using it as a 3D planner. Basically, it was very easy to use, and another neat idea. The Dragon took off this morning, SpaceX Dragon off to the space station, and can't remember the details on it, but one of the pieces of cargo on it is they put it down as maker technology, and that I pulled off the NASA site, but I'm sure if I dig enough I can find out exactly what they're doing. But they're following up on their, well, they've had 2 3D printers on board. They have a test one, and now they have a permanent 3D printer, and now they're going to augment it some way. And it's just neat seeing the technology spread out. And we're all silent.
Sorry, I was trying to catch up, listening to what you guys were talking about, trying to get back up to speed.
Well, we started talking about, Printable Scenery is one company that they make STLs, and you can buy them from them. And theirs is all based around gaming. And it's a great business model, I think, the way they're working it. And, I sort of wish I could do the same thing for model trains. But there's the potential is, awesome for that. Oh, there we go. It's I'm reading chat too. So
yeah, it's
is that on your channel? Is that what they pushed up to the station for the makerspace?
No, I actually didn't even know anything about that. I'm gonna have to look into that now. I didn't even know there was a launch today. Usually I try to keep up on that stuff.
Yeah, I was fortunate. I just said, oh yeah, there's a launch this morning. I went to space.com and it was streaming live, and I got there when the count was about 6 minutes going down, so got to watch the launch and the pinpoint landing again of the first stage. It's amazing. When you see it on the screen, it's one thing to think of it small, but then you think of the height of that. We don't have a building in this community that is as tall as that first stage of the Falcon 9. And so just imagine trying to do a pinpoint landing with something that size and keeping it upright. I just find it mind-blowing. And then, seeing how other companies, is it Aerojet Rocketdyne or Rocketdyne Aerojet, but whichever, they're doing more and more tests with their 3D printed motors, increase in efficiency and decrease in construction time and decrease in cost. It's just so hard to wrap around what some of these places are doing.
Ron, the Happy Extruder, said he has a video called 3D Printing in Space on his channel. That's about it.
Hey, Richard, I have a question for you.
Yep.
So given that, your application for 3D printing, a lot of your model making, your trains and stuff like that, and how much you've been into the Moai lately, and then the resin printing and stuff like that, you mentioned you haven't run your Prusa in quite some time. Do you feel like there's still application for you with that, or is it just because the resin's all new, or do you feel like you could literally replace your whole purpose for what you like to print for with resin printers?
They're both tools that have different applications. Now, my primary goal of making additions for the layout, that is where the resin printing, there's no comparison between SLA printing and FDM printing for that, for the details. But tried to print a larger case, and I've been following some on the different resin printing forums out there, and at least the Moai isn't really the right machine for doing that. So some of the parts my daughter's been doing, I would never consider printing them in resin. That's where the FDM printer comes in. Also, with the resin, there's not a lot of different resins out there. And what you're really changing is what type of color is there. Now there is, this stuff is, I think 80 bucks a liter US, whereas, dental resin is 255 bucks a liter US. Now on the Moai site, there's a number of dentists that talk about what they're doing with it. So it is seeing use there. But you pop over to the FDM side, and I have all sorts of wood filaments here and metal filaments. It's a wide range of materials that you could use. My favorite of the philosophical frogs and that printed in wood filament, and I much prefer this as a wood print than a resin print. So it's one of those things where they each have their place. One of the add-ons you use for this, you have to print on a Moai because it's the VAT cover. And of course, so if you're printing something over top of the vat, it has to be bigger than your print surface, unless you want to stitch everything together. But so no, each one has its place. It's just for my application, for layouts, this is the way to go.
Gotcha.
Pooch, if I can speak to that as well. For me, FDM is always going to be there because the sheer economics of resin printing now, I don't need superfine detail unless I'm printing miniature figurines. That's where SLA printing comes in. And I probably wouldn't be looking at a Moai for that. I'd be looking at a FormBot, or the Form 2 rather. And that's what I'd be looking at. But the resin is so expensive to bring into Australia. I mean, it's just out of this world expensive.
Sure.
We're looking at 2 to 3 times the US price in Australian dollars because there are really significant import restrictions on chemicals into Australia. But yeah, SLA is, for me, is very much about limited production, high detail, 1 or 2 items, very small detailed items. It's not practical in terms of mass production. And what I need to be, and also with resin, for what I'm trying to do, it doesn't always work with SLA printing just because of the nature. FDM is actually perfect for hollow prints, where you previously, the biggest problem with casting in resin was you basically cast solid pieces. They were just full of resin, and FDM allows me to print hollow structures, and that alone makes it incredibly lightweight, which is very useful for gamers, but also incredibly cheap. You know, when I'm looking at less than $1 for a building, and even with SLA, I'm looking at maybe $30 a building. There's no savings for me.
Sure.
I might as well just buy ready-made and import it.
So what I was trying to tee up there is I'm always fascinated looking into what, you know, the future of 3D printing and stuff will be. And so I hear, and I've done limited work with SLA, and I've done a lot of work with FDM as well. And I understand that there are different tools for different applications. But what I was hoping to kind of look at for a second was, if the cost comes down and if the speed goes up, if the technology improves the way that FDA, because it's, you know, it's certainly later to the party. I mean, the technology's been around, but in terms of like mass, you know, appeal and stuff like that, could it theoretically unseat if it got to a point where, you know, the build volumes were similar and all that stuff? I don't know if you guys saw that article that's been hot this week on holographic SLA and how that's going to, you know, revolutionize things because it's going to take it, you know, to an instantaneous, you know, matter of seconds model type of thing and up the speed and whatnot.
Well, one of the things about resin printing is there is post-processing you have to do.
Right.
You put it through a cleaner such as isopropyl alcohol using 99% here, and then you have to do the curing afterwards. So there are steps, whereas firing it through an FDM printer, pulling it off, and there are prints that you can just take it off the bed and hand to somebody, you're done.
Sure.
So,
but theoretically, that could be automated in the future. I'm just wondering, like, if you're trying to think about how this technology is going to evolve for the future, do you think it's got more potential for long-term legs in terms of being, you know, tipping to mass production or mass appeal over, say, an FDM?
I think long-term, I think it's going to be option D. Rather than FDM printing or SLA printing or SLS, the powder printing, something that, well, they talk about, I guess in a way of FDM printing, Protopast is talking about the concept of having your primary colors as pellets, and you pour it in there, and you print whatever color you want. And so you're not dealing, you don't have rolls of filament or anything. It's just like having a standard printer. You got a cartridge, you get a print. Will that be it? I don't know. What we're really looking for is the replicator, where, you know, it could be like a microwave. Hit the button, you get the print, pull it out, and you're done. And so whatever technology leads to that, when we have that, you're going to see it all over the place.
An atomically perfect replicate.
Yeah, but as long as we're having to do, you know, deal with filaments and extruders and gears with FDM printing, you know, that there's the issue there, and the leveling issues, and the resolution, having those lines on there. That's an issue with FDM. With both SLS and SLA. SLA, you have your resins, and you have your cleanup, and you have your curing. With the modeling, as mentioned, if you're building a house, there's no way you want to build that as a solid. You put your drain holes in there, so it's just a light shell, and you're not using much resin, but that comes into design. But you still have all that work to do. Then SLS, you have all your powders to deal with, and taking it off of that print bed and putting it through a post processing area there. So I don't think any of the technologies are there yet, but, you know, we're working in the right direction. I've been following that about the holograms. Now, if we can have the hologram form something in air, like within the microwave, and then you can pull that product out, great. You don't have that resin, but resin is a pain to clean up if you spill some. Angus, when he was doing this one, talking about the Moy when it was a Kickstarter, he mentioned that, yeah, in his new apartment, he ended up spilling resin on the floor, and he was hoping that his landlord hadn't been watching the video. So you know, it's you do have that to work with. But no, I think I don't think we're there yet with any of the technologies, but people are seeing the power of the technology, so it's going to come, you know, more and more part of our lives.
I agree that we're not there yet. Sorry, go ahead, Pete. What did you want to say?
Yeah, there's one major issue with resin printing. Resin is a petrochemical-based product. So it's going to be limited. It's a finite resource. And we're not, and I've been involved in the resin model making industry now for 30-odd years at a commercial level, by association with gaming companies that produce models in resin. Resin prices have never dropped. They've just gone through the roof, and they've moved from much polyurethane-based resins through to more plasticized resins using more vegetable minerals, but there's still a huge amount of petrochemical involved as in turn, and it's not going away. So unless we can get the equivalent of PLA in resin form, you know, effectively a purely vegetable-based filament type, you know, resource, resin printing is not going to make any major gains in terms of mass market.
Okay. Yeah, but isn't along that lines of like the petrol-based materials? Yeah. Isn't like ABS? ABS is a petrol-based plastic, isn't it? And you look at like what you pay for ABS. A roll of ABS is basically the same cost as a roll of PLA. So I mean, they've driven the cost down there. Resin, I don't disagree with you. Resin, any kind of resin, whether it's the epoxy resins, anything that's a resin based, has always seemed to stay expensive. Like, the price really never has come down on any of that stuff.
I mean, I'd argue that's more of a supply and demand issue. I mean, I understand you're saying it's pegged to a resource to some extent, but, you know, to Matt's point, so, you know, I think it's an abundance, it's a popularity issue too, like the demand, you know, it's a cost of scale issue too, I would think. The amount of people using it versus using...
Jason Poe in the chat asked, what our opinion is as far as SLS versus SLA, if we think SLS will ever surpass SLA.
Sintering.
Make it cheaper. I could see that, just a personal opinion with that, I could see SLS getting cheaper than SLA. The only problem with SLS is, from everything I've ever heard and learned about SLS, it's more of a mess because of dealing with the powders than SLA. SLA, yeah, you spill a bottle of resin, get it where it doesn't belong, yeah, it's going to harden on whatever, it could ruin whatever it's on. But with SLS, you're dealing with the powders, and basically, from what I've understood, it's a dirty process. No matter how you do it, no matter how clean people have tried to make it, it's still a really dirty process. So I don't know that SLS, as far as for the home use, I don't know that SLS will ever surpass SLA.
Also, isn't there a lot of waste with SLS, or the volume of which the powder? I feel like I was watching Angus's bit on it, and there's something to do with the amount of volume of material that you need to use, even for stuff that doesn't end up being printed.
You do use a lot of powder with it, but during, I'm thinking of I think they call it the Fusion 1, which is in, beta right now.
That's the Formlabs one, right? Yeah.
It's from the Formlabs. But looking at the videos for it, you have your printer, but then on top of that, I think it's like $10,000 is what they're forecasting, the price range for the printer. But then you buy a recovery station to take all that powder off, recover that in, and you mix it in. I forget what the ratio is, but something like, I don't know, 70% used powder to 30% new. I'm just pulling numbers out of the air, but you're mixing that up and then putting that back into your printer. So you are extending the use of that powder, but it does have a shelf life as well, I guess. But basically, even with something like that, right now, I think you want a dedicated clean room basically to put it in. It looks like it's going to be a challenge, but that's coming down. And as you mentioned, it's market. How much research was put into filaments a few years ago to how much what's going on now. The demand's there, you should know, to bring out this product, because people are looking for the filaments. There is a market now. So with things like the Maya come out, people are looking more, and there's other printers out there. It's just in a different price range. Hopefully the research is going into, more and better resins out there.
So I agree with the state of the current technology. These are all things. I guess what I was driving at is which one of these has the most legs. So, granted that yes, sintering and SLA are not nearly as cost effective now, but when you're looking at the technology moving forward, my contention would be we're coming up pretty quick on the limits of FDM in terms of speed and that piece. Now, granted, I don't know that SLA, like you said, Richard, there may well be an option D that we haven't seen. Like the winner may be that, which we don't know yet. But if I were looking at the technologies that are available today and thinking about the potential of what's going to make a 3D printing technology tip to the point of mass adaptation, not to the early adopter hobbyist phase that we're in now, I like SLA for the reason that I see a path to the level of detail and speed that I think it would need to be to have a commercial appeal. Now, I think there's going to be some issues around longevity, because obviously the resin doesn't last; it continues to cure and get brittle and stuff. Maybe there's a solution where it can be finished over, but if this holographic technology where you can in a matter of seconds create a model, and the parts, so you're saying if it was hollow, and we can address those things in software and slicing, where yes, right now the process by which slicing is done for SLA, but I would argue too that Pete's thing that's the cost I feel like is more of a cost of scale because there's just not nearly the amount of people using SLA because it's still not the adaptation. Because the technology is just more expensive to run too. It's kind of a chicken or the egg thing, and to some extent.
Well, one thing I have to say is I find that is very, very simple to put together. You know, this Moe, we're just talking about this one type of printer here, but it's very easy to put together and it's very easy to use. Speed-wise, go back to my gunboat here. I printed this off in our last stream. And so, you know, once the print was done, you know, I did some cleanup, and then after the stream, I fired it off into the light bucket to cure it. So the ease definitely is there. If I had to give a printer to somebody based on, you know, how are you with technology, I'd be more comfortable giving them this printer than an FDM printer.
That's interesting. Even though there's a lot more posts to be done with it.
Yeah. Because
people can deal with post-processing because that's an analog skill.
Yeah.
But assembling a printer, you know, requires so many different skill sets that not everyone has exposure to. Like I'm almost completely dangerous if you let me loose with electronics and electrics. So 3D printing, assembling a kit really almost wasn't an option for me. Whereas the Moai and things like that, yes, they're kits, but they're absolutely, compared to a Tronxy or something like that, they're completely easy, you know.
Well, as you can see, I'm sorry for the shake camera here, but there's the guts of the Moai in there. And you got your circuit boards there, and you have your galvo. The galvo comes together assembled. That's what has the laser and the mirrors. And that's it for that. Up top, you have a vat resin and a build plate. And basically, it's one big box. You need the space down below for the laser to and the mirrors to, you know, travel some distance so you can have an even light on the build plate. You can't be any closer than that. You know, that's where you need the distance. And it's simple, straightforward. It works quite nicely.
So there was a question in the chat by Racing Mouse 24. What is the largest SLA print possible at this time? I thought that was an interesting question, and so I started Googling, and I would have just off the top of my head guessed the Form 2, but there is a printer. It's a DLP though, so I don't know if that counts as an SLA. It's a resin printer. So I don't know if the question is SLA specific or if it's a resin, but there is one called the Morpheus 3D that has a 330 by 180 by 300 build volume. That's by far the biggest I've seen for a resin-based printer. If anybody else is aware of one that's bigger, I'd love to hear about it.
I'm just taking a look here for the supports. I use the B9 Curation software. Fantastic program for dealing with supports. I'm just trying to, they also have printers, resin-based printers, and they're a larger one. I'm trying to find a print volume for it.
The thing is about the technology, there's no, I guess I can't say I'm not an engineer in SLA, you know, development, but like I don't see any reason that the technology couldn't be scaled more. That sounds like famous last words, you know.
Like I think you're right there.
You think there might be limitations, or you think you might be right?
No, I think you're on the right track.
Yeah. So I mean, that's the kind of things I'm thinking about. It's like, yes, I understand right now, yes, a large print would be expensive. Yes, the resin costs a lot of money, but like, are we one technological breakthrough away from, you know, getting people to shift? And if how compelling would it be? How willing would somebody like Pete be to pay, say, $5 for a model, but that was ready in, say, 10 seconds versus 10 hours, you know? Like,
Actually, if
depends
it
on
was
your
ready in 2 hours, I'd shift.
What's that?
If it was ready in 2 hours, I'd shift.
In 2 hours. So I mean, like that's a factor of say 5 or even more. I mean, SLA printing takes a long time, or can, depending on how big it is and the detail that you're dealing with.
I was just taking a look at this one that Ron, the Happy Extruder, had said about it. It's I'm not sure if it's Mimikai or it's MIMAAKI. This appears to be a UV resin based printer, but what they're doing is full color. Looks like it works like an inkjet printer essentially. I'm guessing maybe sprays down a droplet of resin in different colors, cures it, moves to the next level. I'm assuming from what I'm reading. Now, I'm going to say all this with, it says available late 2017. They better get their shit together if they want to make that work.
What was the article written?
This is on their website. It doesn't have a date on it.
Okay.
The maximum model size would be 500 millimeters by 500 millimeters by 300 millimeters.
That's a big build volume.
That's big. I mean, that's what GMAX printer size or CR10 S5 size. Not quite on the height, but the width and depth of it for sure. Now, it's just kind of quickly. That's the first I've seen this. I think Ron said they were at Maker Faire, but I must have missed that.
Yeah, they were at Maker Faire. I got an interview with them, but haven't yet published it. I got 9.5 hours.
The video footage. Story of my life.
Any idea?
Yeah, I'm going to be going back through the GoPro footage from the one I had on my shoulder the whole time.
Too much footage. Too much footage.
Yeah, well, that's why you never saw a video from me from Maker Faire. He said it was at Maker Faire working, and it's the fast food theory. Apparently, I guess I didn't see what speeds they were talking on their website, but apparently it's supposed to be pretty fast too. Which I guess if you don't have an entire vat of resin to sort of be patient with, like if it is actually throwing down like droplets like an inkjet printer would, I could see that you could cure that pretty quickly.
Yeah. I mean, there's a technological analog we already have. I think that's a familiar thing. I think that, the potential is there. But, you never know with this kind of thing.
Well, the other side too is I see, I talked about it a month ago or so, where in other industries they're saying, well, we're not going to send you the spare part, but here is an STL. Find a 3D printer outfit near you. They can print you the parts you need. And that, there's one site, I have to track it down again. I've lost it. There was well over 1,000 companies had a large list of their products on there. You put in the company and the part number, and then you can get the STL for or the OBJ, depending on what they had available. And then, you print it off, you had your parts. So that's moving. These aren't 3D printer people. This is standard industry. And, that's why Ford, some of their 2018 models, the truck model, I think it is, the manifold will be 3D printed on a production line.
The manifold?
Yes. So, their goal, they said, is to get to, I forget the percentage now. 40% of production line being 3D printed. I could be wrong. It's been quite some time since I saw that article. But they're pointing out that if they have to retool a factory for a new vehicle, they have to sell 10,000 units just to cover the cost of retooling.
That's fascinating because what that would potentially do for the future. You think about how cars go through a model year, or they go through a refresh, every couple years, maybe 4, 5, 6. I guess it depends on the car. But what that might mean for the fact that the 2017 versus the 2018. I mean, you can have just dramatically different and really they're not limited by trying to get their money back out of the tooling, right?
Well, the article, they talked about a couple of things. One was when they make a door handle for a vehicle, for every one that goes into a vehicle to going out the door, they have to make 500 more to stock places around the world. So there's, you know, the dealerships and parts companies have a part for that vehicle.
Yeah.
And they said in the future, their goal is to not have any of them.
Yeah.
They make a doorknob and they make it, that's it. You lose your part, you know, it's broken, what have you, you go to your nearest Ford dealer and they'll print you the part.
Yeah.
Or, you know,
well, we're talking about a couple different things, though. I get asked. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say the other aspect they have for design is their designers now work in the 3D world, and they design their parts with all the technology we have. But the final design has to be something that can be machined, and that is taking them back a few decades. Whereas they want to be able to design a part and be able to have the production line be just like what they designed because they 3D printed it.
See, I personally, so like I've heard the deal with Ford 3D printing the manifold. You know, personally, I would love to see one because I can't picture in my head, like when they say, you know, we're 3D printing the manifold, I'm thinking, you know, I want to see one. I'd love to just some Ford dealership, just let me hold one in my hands and take a look at it.
Yeah, same here.
I don't know. I can't pick.
I don't know what the other, that was one article I came across, that was Ford. So what are all the other manufacturers doing? Especially, you know, look at someone like Toyota that's supposed to be, you know, high tech all the time. What are they putting into their machinery? And where is that going to take us? But yeah, going back to the original question, you know, will we have that 3D printer microwave in the kitchen sort of thing? And, you know, this idea of spraying resin in there, that might be the way to go. FDM, you're talking about the speeds. MIT, I think it was, released, it was a story on MIT printer about 2 months ago, or pardon me, 2 weeks ago, where they used, instead of stepper motors, they replaced the stepper motors, and my brain just went blank. Servos. They put in servos, and the interesting thing is they, it's like they threaded the filament. So there's some texture to the filament, but that increased the print speed by about 10 times.
The only problem with that is the servos that are capable of doing that get expensive.
Well, that's the thing, though. Go back 10 years. Stepper motors cost what servo motors cost today, and stepper motors, they plummeted. So if the demand's there,
supply and demand.
Yep.
The Mod T, you ever see that? Like, it's actually a really inexpensive printer, but it's servo based. I remember seeing that a couple years ago at ISTE, I think. I don't know if anybody has one or seen it. I think it got lukewarm reviews. It's not a big build volume and stuff, but it's it's dead silent.
I think there were issues. I know Chuck had one that he reviewed. I had seen one at a Micro Center up and running, and the consensus was there was a lot of issues with the way the bed moved, that it wasn't reliable because the bed was basically floating on top of threaded rod. And as that turned, it would move. One would turn this way, the other would turn that way, and it could move in 4 directions.
Right.
I think that was like the bigger drawback to that. It just the mechanism for the bed and the way it moved was not reliable. But that has nothing to do with the servos, though. That's just the way they chose to actually attach the bed to it.
Yeah, so maybe that's a design thing. I don't know. I also finding like a search for the Mod T that I can buy it at Kohl's.com that for some reason just doesn't sit well with me.
I almost, when I bought my second printer, I almost bought a Mod T off of Craigslist. I was real close because the guy wanted like $50 for it.
Oh, for $50.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just wondering whether the wider acceptance of 3D printing full stop and the longevity of the type of 3D printing will come down to which technology is able to design and manufacture an appliance level of printer. So like a printer that's basically as reliable and can be bought off the shelf and plug in and work like a microwave.
Plug and play.
Irrespective of the design of the printing format, whoever comes up with that is going to have such a market penetration.
Well, if you look back at the history of the computers, the change that happened when IBM brought in the IBM PC, you know, the heavyweight moved in. We already had the Apples and Ataris and Commodores and so forth, and you know they were spread out, the trash 80s. But the game changer there was when the IBM PC came out. It wasn't that it was the best or the fastest or anything, but it had IBM stamped on it. And
that gave it legitimacy? Is that what you're... That it gave it legitimacy? Is that what you...
Yeah, that's where, you know, businesses would look at, well, you know, do we want this Commodore on there? You know, it might be a pet or whatever. When, you know, we see it on television, people singing about, you know, I love my 64 sort of thing. And I won't sing that for you. But when businesses are used to having the IBMs in their offices already, because they had their selector typewriters, they had IBM photocopiers, and now they have the IBM PC and it fit in.
It was viewed as a legitimate player or something. And
also the IBM PC was actually reasonably reliable.
Yes.
That was the thing. That was the thing that got it really going. Now Dremel are a household tool name.
Yes.
They've done 3D printers, but they haven't been successful because they're not at that stage of being an appliance.
No,
so who could be successful then by that measure?
I think honestly, like Pete said, if anybody was going to be successful with it, it would have to be somebody like Dremel. The only problem is, like, currently Dremel has the problem that, you know, FDM printing, there's auto bed compensation, but there isn't actually automatic bed leveling, things like that. When the technology gets to the point where your bed actually adjusts itself to make itself level to the nozzle, mesh leveling, okay, it's kind of there, but mesh leveling makes a map of your bed and raises and decreases the Z as it goes across the bed. You got to set that up. It's still not foolproof, but if you get something to the point where the bed knows that this corner, this corner, this corner, and this corner are all level, and if they're not, it actually compensates for it. That, I think, is what the point where you'll start to see a printer that becomes more plug and play, so to speak.
It would almost take less of a Dremel, more of a Black & Decker.
Black & Decker, there you go. Black & Decker will be the one to...
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think more than the brand, perhaps right now, is one that A, is reliable, and B, one that's front and center at, say, Lowe's or Home Depot, one of those
Well,
places.
it seemed like the Dremel printers were, our local Lowe's had the Dremel printers.
Yeah.
They sell well, and they're not there now.
I would argue that brand. I don't think brand is going to matter as much as it might for your generation. The upcoming generation, I don't think has the same kind of brand loyalty that,
Go get my
that you're thinking about from the IBM generation.
Yeah, we have been, our mindset is different, but I think that has to be reliable, and it has to be carried by a mass marketer.
I think that that's the key for any success in general, but I would say I think it's going to be more merit based, you know, like the reliability, hands down, the speed. You know, I get asked this question all the time by non 3D printing people. They go like, yeah, I read an article, I heard about 3D printing, but why do I need one? And I hate that question from non 3D printing people, because the answer is you don't, you won't right now. You have to. It's still very much an enthusiast, hobbyist thing in the desktop consumer space. So we were talking about two things earlier. We were talking about like an industrial level, and that's a whole nother ball of wax from getting mass adaptation for like a desktop level 3D printer versus like what Ford is going to use. That's like saying like, you know, what the inkjet printer is to like a massive web press, you know, Heidelberg web press or whatever. I mean, they're not even the same ballpark of thing. And we'll see the same thing, you know, in this application. Maybe the technologies will be adjacent, maybe there won't be anything alike, but they have different needs for different people. And for the average person, I think it has to go back to what Richard was saying. It's got to be like the replicator on Star Trek. Like, until they can be like, oh, I broke my door handle off of my car and I can just get a thing and go to the replicator and print it out. Yeah, then everybody wants one.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Aesthetically, it's got to fit the appliance, the look of an appliance, reliability, and speed. It's got to be like a replicator.
Yep.
And I think we're a ways from that now.
I don't know. Do any of you know what type of printers the U.S. Navy put in? It was it was an aircraft carrier. They decided to just do a test, put in 3 printers, and they paid for themselves almost immediately because their radios, the handheld radios, had a clip, and they constantly broke those. And the clips, you know, cost a great deal of money each one. You know, great deal is they may have only been, you know, $40-50 each, but when you have hundreds of them out on the ship and you're losing these all the time, you go in, design a better print clip and print it off as needed for a few bucks. It was a major change, but it was an FDM printer, but I don't know what kind. Do you know anything about that story?
Yeah, I found it, but I don't have details on the printer. They just say that they have a printer.
Okay.
So is it a printing
it's sort of the training process of the things you can do with printing. And let's go back to the IBM scenario again. You know, it wasn't a true office unless you had a IBM Selectric typewriter in there. And I had to deal with writers who fought tooth and nail to keep their Selectrics until we educated how much more powerful a word processor could be and what they could do, and you know, how much more productive they could be, and how they can make use of this computer and how they can do other things with it. And so that took what, at least 5 years to get that penetration in before it was, oh, you still use this electric. You know, it was quite some time before that viewpoint changed. We have to train people now that you can design things, you can make them as needed, global wise. They don't have to be made on the other side of the country, make thousands of these things where hundreds of those, or perhaps thousands of those thousands, don't get used. They end up in warehouses. You make what you need, you make it locally. And that is a selling feature. And when I mention that to folks, that sort of opens up eyes. So as you mentioned, you know, why do I need a 3D printer? Yeah, you don't. But neither do you really need to get a part like this little gear that I have in my hand, manufactured in China and put in a ship and sent over here, stored somewhere. And then, you know, if you need it, you have to find it and get it sent to you, as opposed to you need a part, you get the model for it, you print it, and you put it in your machine, you're done. And that's an education.
Yeah, because, I mean, so going off of what you're saying, Richard, just like that, I mean, there is the benefit. Yes, FDM printing or resin printing might be slow right now. It may not be replicator speeds. But I can print, like, okay, talking about that gear, I have a meat slicer, a deli slicer, just a little cheap $150 deli slicer, kind of like the butchers use, but a lot smaller. It's got this stupid little worm gear in it that is built to wear out. The design of it is that thing wears, period. It's a sacrificial part. They're $25 a piece. So I'm already at, what, an eighth of the price of the slicer. And it takes me 2 days to get it from the time I order it, if I order, say, from Amazon. In the meantime, I could take, and I have since I got the 3D printers, I've designed or modeled that worm gear, and when I need one, I print it in it's been a while since I printed one, but like 2 or 3 hours, I have it, rather than waiting 2 days. So
how much meat are you actually slicing, buddy?
We buy our steak and stuff, we buy in big butcher size chunks of it.
Yeah, those are cool. I like that.
So this thing is like way overworked when I do that.
We used to buy half a cattle beast a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That waiting 2 days versus waiting 3 hours for you know, in all reality, I think the ones that I print actually last longer than the ones that I'd have to buy. That has
you're a
its
willing
benefits.
participant right now, you know. Like,
what was that?
And you have the skills to model and all that stuff. Like, until, you know, we know that, but to you and I, it's appealing. Like, we realize, like, it might not even be worth your time financially if you're factoring in how much time you've spent and all that stuff. But
you're absolutely right.
Even if it is, you're willing because you don't like things going to waste. You don't like spending money on stuff that breaks. You know, people like us, like, it's so in that sense, is that what makes it a hobby still too, or you know, we're the ones paving the way for the next generation for, you know, the improvements? And
I would say more than a hobby, it makes it a niche, because like you said, what you're describing, you've got the people who don't like to rely on somebody else to do something.
Right.
That's me in and out, and that's why 3D printing is appealing to me. Now, the average person, back when I bought my first printer, the one guy I worked with, he vapes, and at the time he was building vape mods, the battery that you use to power it and everything. He was building his own mods, and I bought my printer, and he got really interested in it. Now, he's somewhat got the same mindset I do, where, you know, rather do stuff yourself. But even still, the more him and I talk, it's like, you know, this may not be for you. You don't have the time to sit down and spend to model something. If it's not readily available, this may end up sitting on your shelf and not getting used. That's somebody who I would say is above average, and it still doesn't apply to them. So you've got a group of us who would rather not buy something from someone, and we have the time and take the pride in actually designing something ourselves. But that's not most people, especially nowadays. Nowadays, everything's 2 days away, and most things people can wait for.
I think what we're also moving into that groove. We're also moving. Well, I've seen it in 3D printing, is that we've actually moved to an area where there are now economically viable models for design houses to provide STLs for a cost.
Yep.
And that actually, and that sort of starts in the hobby area. A lot of the commercially viable cottage industries, or now small industries, developed out of hobby cottage industries, what I call cottage industries, you know, your garden shed type stuff. Now they're moving to that. And the same goes with digital delivery of design. Not everyone has the artistic or creative skill set to work digitally or just to design stuff. So outsourcing that, but producing it at home, is allowing people who wouldn't normally even think about that side of things get into 3D printing as well. So we're seeing a take up on that, particularly from I see in the 30 plus generation, whereas the younger generation, oh God, I'm starting to sound like my dad, is already on board with new technology and the embracing of new technologies. You know, they see that as a natural progression, because the pace of domestic use of technology has just accelerated compared to 20 years ago. Look at the internet compared to 20 years ago. Look at the developments and what we're doing with the internet, what we're doing digitally throughout that affects every part of our daily life. I think that's where we're actually starting to see a little bit of a sea change in regard to 3D printing, as it is starting to move away from the very much the basement workshop area. People are starting to come on board at a greater and greater rate you wouldn't normally expect to, because they're not expecting to have to design stuff themselves either. So we've got an actual end user development arriving now, rather than a through user.
With the printing, one thought I had with the military before it goes, the one outfit, talking with a fellow, he was a retired intelligence officer, and he wouldn't tell me where this was, but it was one location he was at. I don't even know what country he was in, but it was the building was a standard CB warehouse, and the dimensions of that, I know, is the perimeter is 1 mile. Because if you're doing laps and they want miles, they had all the troops doing laps around the building. But he said on the inside was nothing. He went through 3 bays in there, 4 bays, and it wasn't until he got to the last bay that he found out what this military supply depot had. And occupying about 1/4 of the last bay was a 3D printer farm. And that was their supply depot. So it was an interesting use of the technology and how it's impacting things.
Well, I'm going to drop off, guys.
Yep, my cue as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think we should call it.
Yeah, probably time to call it.
It's a shame I'm dropping
The
off.
discussion we're getting into, I think, almost could lead into a whole nother streams.
Coach, are you going to host the next one?
Yeah, I can do that. I'm happy to do that.
Peter Pooch.
Pooch, do you want to host it, man?
I absolutely would love to do one of these days, but I don't have any urgency to it. So you guys, we can work it out. Pete, it's awesome to see you in person though for the first time. I'm glad you're getting involved.
Hey, it's just fun. Look, I mean, obviously, it's going to be the
29th, I think.
29th. So, it's the middle of my 3-day weekend, so I'm easy to get things up and running. It actually suits me perfectly to help out like that. So I'll liaise with Matt and everyone, and we'll get it up and running.
I'll tell you, here's the way I usually do it. The first one to say it gets it. So guess what, Pete?
So what do we know what topic we're going to have?
It's up to you. You're
great.
Your choice.
Might sort of revisit a twist from a few months ago. There's been a lot of comment, and Joel actually, there was a best 3D printing videos list, and Joel went off on a really awesome rant on that today. I might run a twist on that about big and small YouTube, big and small content creators, and bringing in the alternative platforms that we're starting to see now. And what
alternatives are you saying, just out of curiosity, because the one I was starting to use disappeared.
I'm sticking with YouTube and Twitch.
Twitch and YouTube, okay.
Yeah.
I was actually kind of thinking the same thing, that it would be nice to do an episode where just everybody who co-hosts brings the channel.
Playing Minecraft?
What in the world?
The Minecraft channel is up, and I think that's my cue.
Yeah.
I look forward to hearing what you pick, though, Pete.
Okay, yeah, I'll pick you guys' brains anyway by Twitter.
Yep, thanks, Pete, for coming. Thanks, John, for coming. Richard, Pete, thank you, everybody. Thank everybody in the chat who's still sticking with us.
All right, see you guys.
See you guys.
Are we off?
Yep. Nope, not yet.